Chapter 663. When everything was really calm, Summer Solstice came to the ruins of a palace that had completely collapsed according to her memory. This palace was also in the corner of Mount Dibbing, a place that was not usually noticed. Summer Solstice stood beside the ruins and was silent for a while, then gently waved her hand. Her gentle movement brought a gust of wind. The powerful wind blew the ruins up with a rhythm. On the dusty floor, she found a switch and pressed it. The ground was shaking slightly. The cracked floor was separated to both sides, and the cracks on the ground were shattered, looking more and more ferocious. A deep passage appeared in front of Summer Solstice. The light at the front of the passage had been extinguished, and the alloy walls on both sides were slightly distorted. Therefore, when the passage opened, the sound was extremely harsh. Summer Solstice looked calm and walked along the passage. At the end of the passage was not a secret research room with a high-tech atmosphere, but a rather luxurious and comfortable space. When Summer Solstice came in, 4 or 5 middle-aged men and women in white research uniforms were sitting on the sofa, talking about something with a dignified face. Seeing Summer Solstice coming in, they stood up at the same time and said respectfully, "Madam. What are you talking about?" Summer Solstice chuckled and took the initiative to ask. "There are some small problems in the research process. We are discussing whether there is a better solution." The oldest middle-aged man had white hair on his temples. As he spoke, he picked up a notebook from his pocket and quickly jotted something down. Then, he smiled and said, "So far, it seems that the results of the discussion are not bad." The ground of Mount Dibbing had long been a mess with blood flowing like a river. But separated by the thick alloy walls, the ground and the underground were 2 completely different worlds. Just like many people rarely cared about what the real underground core places of the Wang family of Beihai were doing, they just chose to pay attention to the results. These people in the Underground Research Institute also rarely paid attention to what was happening on the ground. At this moment, these people in front of them didn't even know what was happening on the ground. Summer Solstice didn't say much. She just nodded and said casually, "Where is Naylan? The doctor has just made a new discovery and is making a record." The oldest middle-aged man replied. When it came to the doctor, his respectful attitude was far better than when he was facing Summer Solstice. Summer Solstice nodded and said, "Go ahead." Then she walked to one of the rooms. The middle-aged men and women looked at each other for a moment. They wanted to say something but hesitated. In the end, they didn't stop him. In the center of the resting area, there was a room that stood out from the masses. The room was located in the center, and the silver door frame could be said to be the most eye-catching color in the resting area. Xianxia stopped in front of the silver door and knocked on it. The room was silent for a moment before a pleasant voice rang out, "Come in." Summer Solstice pushed the door open. The room was filled with silvery light that shone on her body. Her body seemed to be somewhat transparent. This was an incomparably pure room. The walls, the table, the chairs, the bed, and the bedsheets were all silver. The exquisite room was not big. A very young woman was sitting in front of a small desk. She wore a pair of silver glasses and was typing seriously on the keyboard. When Xianxia walked in, she didn't even raise her head. She just said lightly, "What's the matter?" Focused men are very attractive. Focused women are more attractive. The woman had delicate and neat short hair and a jade-like face. She sat quietly in front of the computer in a meticulous posture. The whole person looked as beautiful as a painting. Her delicate face was extremely focused and almost serious. This seriousness turned into a kind of coldness that kept people thousands of miles away, like an iceberg in a room full of silver light. The light blended together and was extremely cold and sharp. "I heard that you have a new discovery." Summer Solstice closed the door, stood in the room full of silver light, and laughed. The sound of typing on the keyboard suddenly stopped. The woman behind the screen finally raised her head and saw Summer Solstice. She seemed to be stunned for a while, then stood up and called her auntie in a flat voice. She was not warm, not cold. The silver glasses were taken off by her. She looked at Summer Solstice and didn't ask her to sit down. She just said quietly, "Auntie, what's the matter?" Without the cover of her eyes suddenly became extremely charming. They were different from the black pupils of ordinary people. There was a trace of incomparably deep and enchanting silver in her eyes. Resplendent, silent, enchanting, yet incomparably arrogant. The Wang family of Beihai had an indomitable sword emperor, who supported everything of the Wang family of Beihai like a sea-stabilizing needle. Under the huge figure of Wang Tianzong, there were also many soul figures in the Wang family of Beihai. Some were well known. Some were unknown. Some of them rarely appeared, but their names had already spread far and wide. The young woman in front of him happened to belong to the third category. She rarely left Mount Dibing and had never left Beihai. But in Jianghu State and the Dark World, almost everyone who paid attention to the Wang family of Beihai knew that there was such a code name. Silver Eyes. She had a double doctorate in human biology and genetics, and was the main person in charge of the biological laboratory of the Wang family of Beihai. Perhaps such an identity was not enough to attract everyone's attention. But in recent years, there had been clear evidence that the woman with the code name Silver Eyes had devoted herself to research that had always attracted worldwide attention. This was the core project of the Wang family of Beihai. The development of the third generation of immortality potion was currently in charge of the woman in front of him. She was Nailan Shuriying, the genius of this generation of the Nailan family of Beihai. The Nailan family was not one of the 7 major sword-holding families in Beihai. But in the past 200 years, the patriarch of the Nailan family of every generation had a name recognized by countless people. The first famous doctor in Jianghu State. This was a real famous doctor family, or even a real Dr. King family. Summer Solstice looked at Nailan Shuriying quietly. Her eyes were a little distressed. It was not pity, but pity, and some regret. She took the initiative to sit down on a chair next to her. She looked at the other party's silver and proud eyes and didn't speak for a long time. Nailan Shuriying put down her work and silently poured a glass of water for Summer Solstice. Up there, Summer Solstice pointed up and whispered, "Something happened just now, but it's over now." "Li Tianlan?" Nailan Shuriying asked. Summer Solstice was a little surprised. "How do you know?" "I talked to my father on the phone a few days ago. He said that Beihai has not been peaceful recently." Nailan Shuriying said indifferently. "Yes, it's not just peaceful. From the south to the north, he really penetrated the whole Beihai." Summer Solstice held the glass of water and was silent for a long time. Then she laughed at herself. A strange emotion flashed through Nailan Shuriying's silver eyes. She grew up in Beihai, so she naturally knew how powerful the Wang family of Beihai in Beihai province was. After hundreds of years of development, the Wang family of Beihai today was a family that was infinitely close to perfection. The so-called perfection meant that there was no weakness. The Wang family of Beihai had almost no weakness. Force, foundation, power, wealth, and talent reserve. The Wang family of Beihai had everything. In such a Wang family of Beihai, in such a Beihai province, could someone really sweep all the way and directly step into Mount Dibing? Nailan Shuriying had no concept of this form of strength. She didn't understand martial arts, so she naturally didn't know what the so-called invincibility was. She only cared about one result. Did we lose? Summer Solstice was silent for a long time. Although it was a little embarrassing, there were some things that she still had to tell the truth. We lost. Nailan Shuriying's fingers trembled slightly. Her eyes were still calm, and the subtle emotional fluctuations just now had completely calmed down. She lowered her head slightly and asked, "Dijiang also lost?" Dijiang entered the invincible realm. Summer Solstice said softly. Nailan Shuriying didn't speak and was lost in thought. It's very chaotic up there now. A lot of things have to be dealt with, and it can't be done in a short time. Summer Solstice took a deep breath, looked at Nailan Shuriying, and suddenly smiled. "Nailan, have you ever thought about leaving Beihai for a while?" Nailan Shuriying didn't seem to hear the question. She shook her head. "We may have lost, but Li Tianlan didn't win either. Everyone knows that the real valuable core places of Mount Dibbing are some research institutes located underground. Even if he wins the battle on the ground, how many people can he kill? As long as those research institutes are not destroyed, the foundation of the Wang family of Beihai will not be shaken. She paused and said lightly, "At most, it will be a little embarrassing." This can also prove that Li Tianlan is very sober. Summer Solstice said, "It's not that he doesn't want to touch our research institutes, but he can't. We won't let him touch them, neither will Zhongzhou State. He also knows this very well. But it doesn't mean that he doesn't see it." Naylan Shurien didn't speak. She didn't understand these things, so she didn't bother to ask. She wanted to ask how Dijiang was, but she swallowed the words when they were on the tip of her tongue. "Why are you telling me this?" After a long period of silence, she asked faintly. "Do you want to leave Beihai?" "Well, for a while." Summer Solstice repeated the question just now. Naylan Shurien didn't speak. She looked at Summer Solstice with a puzzled expression. "Leave?" There was a blank emotion in her silver eyes. "Where to?" "Go to Tiannan, or Yuzhou." Summer Solstice deliberated and was a little uncertain. "We need you to do your best to cure a wounded person. I'll tell the lab and your home, and I'll assign you the most professional assistants." Naylan Shurien understood. "Is this Li Tianlan's condition?" she asked softly. Summer Solstice agreed to his condition, which meant the compromise of the Wang family of Beihai. How many years had the Wang family of Beihai never given in the dark world? Had it already reached this step? Summer Solstice finally smiled bitterly without hiding it. In an angle that Naylan Shurien couldn't see, she clenched her fists tightly. Li Tianlan's condition? It could be said that, but it was more than that. The Wang family of Beihai had to ensure that Dongqing Rushi recovered, so Naylan Shurien leaving Mount Dibbing was just the first step. Wang Yuedong's sword finally stopped Li Tianlan from stepping on the stage of formidable person. But it couldn't stop the silver moon from falling into Beihai. And it couldn't stop her from negotiating with Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan was so generous, but what the Wang family of Beihai had to pay was more than just Naylan Shurien. She thought about the series of conditions, and her arms were trembling slightly. More than 20 years ago, she united with Kunlun City to set off the Li family's treason case, which was equivalent to ending the glory of the Li family with her own hands. And today, more than 20 years later, the series of conditions, were they conditions? She shook her head. "No." She whispered in a complicated tone, "This is the rise of the Li family." Chapter 664. Dongqing Wudi didn't sleep all night. That night, countless people in Zhongzhou State and even the entire dark world waited silently for dawn. The mighty vanguard was still gathering toward the floating island and Kanglan in the light of dawn. In the pavilion on the hillside, Dongqing Wudi gently patted the ancient railing and looked at the still rushing Kanglan River. He was as solemn as a statue. Bai Qingzhao sat on the stone bench behind him and put the teapot that he had been playing with all night on the table. He looked a little restless. "No news from Tianlan?" Dongqing Wudi shook his head slowly and said lightly, "No news is good news." Bai Qingzhao was silent for a while and did not speak. He climbed Mount Dibbing alone. Li Tianlan let the whole dark world see his courage. But it also meant that he had to face countless dangers. Although Dongqing Wudi mobilized a large number of troops and fundamentally suppressed the most powerful Beihai corps of the Wang family of Beihai, neither of them was sure whether there was any backup plan on Mount Dibbing. It had been a night since Li Tianlan stepped into Mount Dibbing. But they still did not receive any news about Mount Dibbing. There shouldn't be any problem. Dongqing Wudi suddenly said. With Tianlan's current strength, there can be no accident if he defeats Dijiang on Mount Dibbing. Now the Wang family of Beihai has internal and external troubles. It is impossible for Summer Solstice to take action in person. If she doesn't take action, Mount Dibbing will not have the power to balance Tianlan. Bai Qingzhao's fingers unconsciously rubbed the teapot in front of him. After a long time, he said, "Is it possible for Wang Tianzong to take action by force?" This had always been his biggest concern and the focus of everyone in the Dark World. The Eternal Sword in Eastern Europe could be said to be the strongest sword in hundreds of years. People could be sure that Wang Tianzong was seriously injured in that sword, but no one could be sure how serious Wang Tianzong's injury was. If they were not sure, no one dared to act rashly. Li Tianlan's approach gave everyone a chance to observe the Wang family of Beihai. Tianguang's spirit lock platform. All the way. The entire Beihai province was constantly in turmoil. Wang Tianzong never showed up. This made the whole Dark World realize something, but they could not be sure, or they could not believe it. Until today. Li Tianlan, who had defeated the entire Beihai province, set foot on Mount Dibing. Would Wang Tianzong show up? If he appeared, based on the realm he showed in Eastern Europe, even if he could barely make a sword move, Li Tianlan would not be able to block it. Impossible. Dongxing Wudi smiled and replied in a light but affirmative voice, "He's lucky to be alive now. Maybe he's already dead. It's impossible for him to take action by force." Bai Qingzhao turned his head in the direction of Xingzhou and did not speak for a long time. "Don't worry." Dongxing Wudi sat opposite him and poured himself a cup of cold tea that had long been cold. "Although there is no news yet, it should be soon. Don't you think it's strange?" Bai Qingzhao suddenly asked. "What do you mean?" Dongxing Wudi glanced at him. "The Wang family of Beihai is too quiet. Even without Wang Tianzong, the comprehensive strength of the Wang family of Beihai is still extremely strong. But this time, their performance is too quiet, so quiet that it can even be said to be a little weak. Tianlan defeated the entire Beihai province. Mount Dibing is facing the enemy so passively, and Dijiang is asking to be humiliated. Do they really have no means to threaten Li Tianlan? Even if they don't have force, the Wang family of Beihai has never been weak in science and technology. Well, even if we don't talk about it, since Tianlan stepped into Beihai, has there been any movement in Jianghu state? No. Not at all. The Southeast group has been silent all this time. This is too abnormal." Bai Qingzhao's voice was calm and doubtful. "Don't you understand?" Dongxing Wudi laughed. "Because Beihai is a part of Jianghu state." He said slowly, "Jianghu state is a country, a camp, and there are rules in the same camp. Tianlan came to Beihai this time to ask for an explanation. He stepped on the Wang family's face, but he never did anything. What Jianghu state can't accept is to abide by the rules. Even if the Wang family of Beihai really has the means to kill Tianlan, they can't use it. If they use it, they don't abide by the rules. Within the rules, as long as Tianlan has the strength, he can sweep everything. What can the Wang family of Beihai do to him? It's not like that." Bai Qingzhao shook his head solemnly. "Even if the Wang family of Beihai doesn't touch Tianlan, can't the Southeast group make a fuss in other places? The Wang family of Beihai was the strongest force in the Dark World. In Jianghu state, the Southeast group led by the Wang family of Beihai was also one of the strongest groups in Jianghu state. Its influence was obviously stronger than that of the giant group and even the academics. The unusual silence of the Southeast group was what made him most uneasy. It's still the same sentence. Dongxing Wudi said slowly, "Beihai is a part of Jianghu state. Am I right to say that?" Dongxing Wudi asked. "Of course." Bai Qingzhao said without hesitation. "It's true. For hundreds of years, this sentence has been said in Beihai and Jianghu state." Dongxing Wudi's smile was a little cold. "It's a fact. But who will really think that such a fact is a fact? In history, many decisions of the Wang family of Beihai have more or less affected the direction of the general trend of Jianghu state. Of course, such an influence is often benign. But generation after generation of ruling groups and rulers, they will not think that benign is good." Dongxing Wudi waved his hand. "No one will deny the contribution and importance of the Wang family of Beihai to Jianghu state. But Beihai is just a province, and the Wang family is just a family. A family, but it affects the general trend of the whole Jianghu state. No matter how good such an influence is, what's the point in the eyes of those in power? It's meaningless. They will only think that it's abnormal. Whether it's good or bad, such a result is indeed abnormal. Beihai is a part of Zhongzhou State, and Beihai Province belongs to Zhongzhou State. Ha, ha ha, for hundreds of years, every generation of rulers will think about a problem at some time. Do you know what it is? In Dongqing Wudi's light voice, Bai Qingzhao clearly perceived a huge, almost majestic pressure. He subconsciously sat up straight and shook his head. The problem they think about is surprisingly consistent. When the Wang family of Beihai influenced Zhongzhou State countless times, every ruler will think that Beihai Province belongs to Zhongzhou State. But because of the existence of the Wang family, what is the actual situation? Does the Wang family of Beihai belong to Zhongzhou State, or does Zhongzhou State actually belong to the Wang family of Beihai? His clear and faint voice was like a thunder, rolling over Bai Qingzhao's head in an instant. Bai Qingzhao's face changed. In the cool morning light of Beihai, the wind of the Kanglan River blew across both sides. But his forehead was instantly covered with a layer of cold sweat. After all, Beihai belonged to Zhongzhou State. Or had Zhongzhou State always belonged to the Wang family of Beihai? This could be said to be the most sensitive question. Dongqing Rushi waved her hand. The answer is not important. The important thing is that I have just said that it's abnormal. The Southeast group is not deliberately silent, but it has to be silent. Because they are also in power, they may not think it's abnormal. But there are 6 groups in Zhongzhou State. The will of the Southeast group is very important, but the will of the other 5 groups is equally important. If they think it's abnormal, then it's abnormal. Dongqing Wudi said calmly. Bai Qingzhao's tone was a little dry. The president talked to me about this topic. Dongqing Wudi was silent for a while, then slowly said, since it's abnormal, we have to correct it. Bai Qingzhao's breathing was a little uneven. How to correct it? Beihai Province belongs to Zhongzhou State. This is the truth, and the truth should become the real truth. Dongqing Wudi said, don't you understand? At least for now, the Wang family of Beihai has temporarily lacked the power to sweep everything. Therefore, the current Beihai and the Southeast group are not facing the pressure brought by the alliance of the giant group and the academics. They are facing the pressure from the tacit alliance of the 5 groups in Zhongzhou State. They must remain silent. Bai Qingzhao was silent for a long time. No wonder. Although everything Li Tianlan did in Beihai did not touch the bottom line, it was not without impropriety. But Zhongzhou State was always silent. So that was it. Zhongzhou State completely wanted to use Li Tianlan to expose the weakness of the Wang family of Beihai to everyone. When everyone noticed the weakness of Beihai and was ready to take action, Zhongzhou State would attack strongly and sweep everything away. Beihai must realize the benefits of being close to Zhongzhou State, and they must also be aware of their own position. They were just a province of Zhongzhou State, not the master of Zhongzhou State. Let's be clear. Zhongzhou State's move was completely to quietly weaken the autonomy of the Wang family of Beihai and Beihai Province. You already have the clearest goal? Bai Qingzhao smiled bitterly. He was sure that such a plan was only brewing in the minds of a limited number of people, and it might even only be brewing in the minds of a few council members of Zhongzhou State. Many members might not be qualified to know. Bai Qingzhao knew that he did not have enough authority, but he could not help but ask. At present, the clearest goal is to nationalize the number 03 base in Beihai. Dongqing Wudi said slowly. Bai Qingzhao's expression suddenly changed, and he even stood up directly. In the silence that lasted for countless years and generations, Zhongzhou State finally showed its long-hidden fangs in the most suitable opportunity. To the Wang family of Beihai. Zhongzhou State's move was not necessarily a stab to the Wang family of Beihai, but this series of actions was undoubtedly putting a rope around the Wang family of Beihai. Number 03 base in Beihai. This was a base that had only been reported in legends, and few people knew the exact location of this base. This was the nuclear experimental base of the Wang family of Beihai. At present, all the nuclear power, power stations, even military equipment, and even nuclear weapons of the Wang family of Beihai were closely related to the number 03 base. There were too many possibilities for what it meant to completely incorporate the number 03 base into the system of Jianghu state. Are you sure? Bai Qingzhao slowly sat down and subconsciously lowered his voice. This is the best chance. Dongqing Wudi said calmly, we have to try. If things really reach the point of no return, then, Bai Qingzhao trembled subconsciously, and his face was a little pale. There is no such if. Dongqing Wudi smiled and said, we are not fools. We won't act recklessly. The phone suddenly rang. Dongqing Wudi took the phone and glanced at the number. He raised his eyebrows slightly, and his tense spirit seemed to relax in an instant. It's a call from Tianlan, he said cheerfully and picked up the call. Minister, I will go ashore in Longjiang by boat and go to Sai City by the way. Li Tianlan's low voice sounded. Dongqing Wudi froze for a moment and said subconsciously, things are not going well? After a long silence, Li Tianlan took a deep breath and said blankly, I don't know. He didn't know if things were going well. He fought through Beihai and climbed Mount Dibing. Now, he didn't want to think about these things. Summer solstice promised me a lot of things. We'll talk about it in detail when we meet, he said slowly. Dongqing Wudi's face relaxed and he nodded. He knew the result of Li Tianlan's trip, so he naturally knew what he should do. What do you want from Jianghu state? I can operate it. He took the initiative to speak. Li Tianlan smiled. His voice seemed a little tired, but it was extremely stable. No need. He said, I don't have any requirements for Jianghu state. Dongqing Wudi was silent for a long time before he laughed and looked extremely happy. He nodded approvingly. This is the most correct thing to do. Can you tell me what you think? Nothing. Li Tianlan said quietly, I just think I should tell some people that I belong to Jianghu state, not the other way around. Chapter 665. Li Tianlan's voice was full of calmness and reason, as if he had thought about it for a long time. Dongqing Wudi's body relaxed completely. His eyes were happy, and he looked extremely gratified. Compared with Li Tianlan sweeping the entire Beihai province, he was more willing to see Li Tianlan's current choice. He had no requirements for Jianghu state. This approach was not only correct, it could even be said to be mature and wise. This was not a reversal of ideas, but a transformation of fundamental thinking. Dongqing Wudi didn't know if Li Tianlan was aware of this, but when he said this decision, Dongqing Wudi clearly noticed Li Tianlan's change. He was still moving forward on martial arts. He was invincible and had no retreat. But in the general trend, he had learned to give in. He gave in from the perspective of a superior. Not making any requirements for Jianghu state was a good move that amazed Dongqing Wudi. It was related to his bravery in Beihai. This advance and retreat were almost all the essence. Many benefits of everything today might be reflected for a long time. But giving up the immediate benefits that Jianghu state gave to East Emperor Palace was enough to show that Li Tianlan's vision was getting farther and farther. In the early morning light, the wind blew over the hillside and passed through Dongqing Wudi's white temples. He could hardly hide the smile on his lips. This was what he wanted. He wanted more than an invincible realm expert who could sweep everything. He wanted a real heir. Such a person should not only be invincible in force, but also have no shortcomings in all aspects. I support your decision. Without any hesitation, Dongqing Wudi expressed his attitude with a smile. Li Tianlan said no more and quietly hung up the phone. How was it? Bai Qingzhao asked at once. Very good. Dongqing Wudi said with a smile, Qingzhao, how do you think Jianghu state should face a Tianlan who has no requirements? Bai Qingzhao froze and looked thoughtful. Dongqing Wudi turned to look at the rushing river and muttered to himself, I can't wait to see their reaction. Dongqing Wudi wanted to see the collective reaction of the high-level officials of Jianghu state. This morning, when many places around the world were still shrouded in darkness, countless people in the dark world saw the reaction of the Wang family of Beihai. The silver moon fell into Beihai. That day, the palace lord of Emperor Dong's palace did not go to the stage of formidable person. However, he left his mark on the stone of ambition forever. The Wang family of Beihai was silent. From beginning to end, in the face of great humiliation and Li Tianlan's aggressiveness, the Wang family of Beihai chose to compromise in the embarrassment that made onlookers uncomfortable. Even the fact that Li Tianlan never stepped into the stage of formidable person was not the Wang family of Beihai's role. It was because of Wang Yuetong, the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai. 3 hours after the battle on Mount Dibing ended. The scene of the battle on the mountain had completely spread throughout the dark world. The Sword Emperor's era, which had lasted for decades, seemed to have completely passed from this moment onwards. Countless people began to quietly think about the plan for the Wang family of Beihai. In a mysterious and turbulent undercurrent. In Eastern Europe, the disciples who had been severely injured by the robbery were finally able to get out of bed and move. The disciples did not return to the European Holy Land with the Vatican. The tribulation on the night before the day of eradication had almost broken the sharpest blade of the Vatican. Arcis, an expert at the peak of the invincible realm who ranked third on the divine list, died. Thousands of the most elite saint warriors of the Vatican had suffered heavy casualties. The entire Vatican had ushered in a serious loss that had not occurred in decades. Its comprehensive strength could even be said to have been weakened by half overnight. The disciple, who had exposed his identity and position, stayed in Eastern Europe to recuperate. Now he was basically out of the order of the Vatican. The disciple had now been transferred to Reki City and was quietly taken care of by an inconspicuous small family. Such a small family was not even close to the rich and powerful. At best, it could only be regarded as a relatively rich family. Because of this, such a family was not worth paying attention to at all. The disciple recuperated here quietly. Today, when Reki City was still under full martial law, he was not even disturbed once. He quietly lurked in Reki City, quietly recuperated, and coldly watched the various changes in the dark world. Only occasionally would he contact the extremely mysterious His Majesty. The result of Mount Dibing spread throughout the dark world in the shortest time. That strange video almost followed the result and spread in the dark world. The devil troop, Dijiang, the Wang family of Beihai, and countless elites who had attacked Xuanyuantai all fell. Blood flowed like a river. Wang Yuetong pulled out a sword and stabbed herself in the heart. The picture was clear and stable. Li Tianlan in the video was strong and cold. This kind of horror had been well known with this video at this time. The disciple watched the video silently, over and over again. He picked up the mobile phone on the table and quietly thought about whether he should call His Majesty. The door was pushed open silently. Under the soft light, a figure who seemed to be shrouded in darkness and shadows came in. "Have you watched the video?" He glanced at the disciple and asked in a calm voice. The disciple's body stiffened in place. He stared at the figure who came in. The dark shadow seemed to linger around him, and everything around him seemed extremely vague. This was enough to show that the other party's control of power had reached an incredible level. Even the disciple who was close to the peak of the invincible realm could not see his face clearly for a while. But in the extremely blurry shadows, he finally saw a trace of a familiar silhouette. And this voice was even more familiar to him. The disciple almost jumped up all of a sudden. The violent movement affected his injury, and his face suddenly turned pale. He gave a muffled groan, and blood spilled from the corner of his mouth, but he became extremely excited. "Your Majesty." His voice was high, but he tried his best to suppress it. "Your Majesty, is it you?" This was the first time he had seen the real body of His Majesty. It was a little vague, but it was extremely real. Before this, the disciple had only seen His Majesty once. But the His Majesty he saw was just a sword intent of His Majesty. After that, the communication between the two was basically on the phone or through the internet. But this time, this extremely vague figure made the disciple tremble slightly. He was sure that this was not a sword intent of His Majesty. It was the real His Majesty. Why are you so excited? In the darkness, His Majesty's indifferent and soft low laugh rang out. How are your injuries? Fortunately, I can recover soon. The disciple's suppressed voice became a little hoarse. His injuries were actually very serious. If he recovered to his heyday, it would take at least 2 or 3 years. But within half a year, he felt that he could recover at least 60% of his combat capability. Such combat capability was basically invincible in today's dark world, as long as he didn't meet Li Tianlan. The disciple thought and subconsciously looked at the video again. In the video, Li Tianlan raised his palm, so calm and so majestic. In the sword and tent, a large number of elites of the Wang family of Beihai who rushed to Li Tianlan were torn apart. The disciple's heart suddenly became more and more depressed. It's wonderful. His Majesty was also enjoying the video. He was silent for a long time, and then slowly said, "The video is also very clear." The disciple was stunned and remembered what he had just thought. "Your Majesty, this video is a little strange." "Why?" His Majesty asked. "This is a battle that happened on Mount Dibing, which is the base camp of the Wang family of Beihai. In fact, I'm a little surprised that the news spread so quickly. This video is obviously shot at close range. I don't think any force can lurk on Mount Dibing at this time, even if Sword Emperor is not there." The disciple said. "Indeed." His Majesty nodded. "So this video can't come from other forces. It's obviously shot by someone inside the Wang family of Beihai. There's nothing strange about it." "Inside the Wang family of Beihai?" The disciple was stunned and said reflexively, "Wang Xiaoyao's man?" "Wang Xiaoyao?" His Majesty's tone was a little playful. At that moment, he seemed to become a little strange. "No." He shook his head. "It should be Wang Qinglei. This is like a signal. Li Tianlan in the video is a foreign invasion, but this video represents the internal troubles of the Wang family of Beihai. Tut tut, is the dignified Beihai going to be in chaos after all?" His tone was a little complicated. "The silver moon moves Beihai." "Tut tut, that's good." The disciple stood aside respectfully and didn't speak. "We don't need to care about the Wang family of Beihai at this time. I'm afraid a lot of idiots will jump out eagerly. But in such a sensitive period of the game between Zhongzhou state and the Wang family, whoever stands out will die." His Majesty looked at the video and said, "And they'll die in an ugly way." "Then what about us?" the disciple asked. "We'll just focus on developing ourselves." His Majesty turned off the computer. "Arrange it. I want to meet the Pope." When everything about Mount Dibing was spread throughout the dark world in the form of videos, Wang Xingxiao, who was still in Feiniao City, finally walked out of the pile of documents that could drown him. Since coming to Eastern Europe, Wang Xiaoyao, who seemed to have nothing to do but had everything under control, once again sat in front of Wang Xingxiao. There were no documents between them this time, only a flash drive with the video. "What is it?" Wang Xingxiao stared at the flash drive for a while and suddenly asked. "Li Tianlan is in Mount Dibing." Wang Xiaoyao yawned carelessly. "This is a video. Do you want to have a look?" Wang Xingxiao's body, which had been calm, seemed to shake for a moment. He looked at Wang Xiaoyao's still laid-back expression, narrowed his eyes, and went straight to the point. "Who shot it?" Wang Xiaoyao glanced at Wang Xingxiao. "Your man." Wang Xingxiao raised his eyebrows. "No." Wang Xiaoyao said blandly, "Is it Qinglei's man?" "I want this name." Wang Xingxiao was silent for a while and said slowly. His voice was flat and without any emotion, but it was extremely firm. Wang Xiaoyao did not say anything. Wang Xingxiao seemed to have lost his expectations and said with a poker face, "What's the result?" Dijiang lost. He lost miserably, but he broke through to the invincible realm. Yuatong was seriously injured in order to stop Li Tianlan. Wang Xiaoyao said blandly, "Li Tianlan didn't go to the stage of formidable person, but the silver moon sword in the 13th floor fell on the stone of formidable person. Wang Xingxiao listened to the deliberately simplified result and was silent for a long time. In the silence, he slowly stood up. The flash drive with the video was crushed by him. He walked to the window and looked at the night outside, silent for a long time. The silver moon moved Beihai. When the dark world was in an uproar, no one knew what the young man, who was nominally the first heir of the Wang family of Beihai, was thinking. Wang Xiaoyao quietly looked at his nephew's back, his eyes extremely quiet. Second uncle. After an unknown period of time, Wang Xingxiao suddenly shouted. Wang Xiaoyao responded. Wang Xingxiao turned his head and smiled. He looked at Wang Xiaoyao's eyes and said calmly, I want to go back to Beihai. Now. Chapter 666. When night fell, Li Tianlan's figure finally approached the white snow that had been high up in the north of Jianghu state for many years. In the night, Mount Taibai was beautiful and holy. It was a solemn beauty. Li Tianlan stood at the foot of the mountain and looked up at the top for a long time before he slowly went up. He had been the young governor of Sai City for several years. But except for the time when he traveled thousands of miles, this was the first time he had officially set foot in Sai City, the city of assassins that shocked the whole dark world. White snow, night, mountain forest. In the cold and almost indifferent atmosphere, from every corner and in every direction, eyes gathered on Li Tianlan from time to time and then quickly moved away. These were all secret sentries of Sai City. During the years of silence of the Li family, Sai City had always been aloof from the world within Jianghu state. Therefore, there were not many core members in Sai City. Even with the peripheral members, the total number was very small compared to the reputation of Sai City. But these small number of secret sentries were cleverly distributed around Mount Taibai and clearly grasped the movement of the whole mountain. There was almost no blind spot on Mount Taibai where the eyes of countless secret sentries met. Li Tianlan's expression was still calm. He just walked up unhurriedly as if he didn't feel those hidden eyes in the dark. The news that he had come to Sai City seemed to have spread. But it was still silent on Mount Taibai. There was no greeting or cheering. It was unusually quiet. On the path on the mountainside stood a boulder nearly 20 meters high, which looked like a giant in the night. The words, military restricted zone, still reflected a clear light even in the night. In contrast, the words, Sai City above the words were much more low-key. It was said that the 3 scarlet characters were personally written by Situ Zhangyue, the hidden god of Jianghu state. They were written in bold calligraphy, cold and sharp. The silence on the top of the mountain remained. Li Tianlan stood in front of the boulder and looked up at the stone tablet in front of him. After a long silence, he continued to climb the mountain. After passing the stone tablet, the snow on the mountain became thicker and thicker. It was all over the mountain, and the snow was dazzling. Li Tianlan's eyes grew calmer. All the battles in Beihai province seemed to have been suppressed in his heart the moment he left Beihai. Walking alone on the mountain road, all he could think about was Sai City. He thought of the support that Sai City had given him since he entered the secular world. He thought of Tribulation, who had been seriously injured and whose foundation had been completely destroyed. He thought of Sunset, who sacrificed herself for him in East Island. He thought of Deep Dream. He thought of Cool Breeze and Flowing Cloud. Sai City. Purgatory of Heaven Capital, Heaven Luo Hall. It was a different form of address. It was the same duty, the same position, and the same person. Sai City was the most mysterious Tian Luo Hall in the Purgatory of Heaven Capital, and it had always been so. Li Tianlan breathed deeply. His figure was like a drifting shadow in the snow that covered the mountains, flickering, almost incorporeal, but his speed was surprisingly fast. It had only been a few days since Li Tianlan woke up in Yuzhou. But in the battle with Dijiang, his dual wind and thunder veins were completely restored, and they were even more powerful than before. Li Tianlan seemed calmer and calmer. His footsteps stepped on the snow as he reached the top of the mountain. In the silent world, he finally saw the first figure he had seen since he came up the mountain. Li Tianlan didn't know if this was a welcome. Deep Dream stood less than 50 meters in front of him. Mi's enemy. Under the night sky, her eyes were shining, filled with fanaticism. Young governor. In the silence, Deep Dream laughed, with undisguised joy in her tone. Welcome back. He was back. Not to welcome him to Mount Dibbing. Li Tianlan's eyes warmed for a moment. He nodded and asked directly, "Where is the governor?" "Her Highness is accompanying the deputy governor." Deep Dream told the truth. "She already knew you came up the mountain. She asked me to wait here and take you there." Li Tianlan didn't say much, but simply said, "Lead the way." Deep Dream turned around and led Li Tianlan forward. Her figure followed Li Tianlan by half a step in a measured way, but she quietly led the way for Li Tianlan. "How many people are there in Sai City?" Li Tianlan walked quietly and suddenly asked. Deep Dream was stunned and whispered, "Including those on the periphery, there are about 2,000 people in Sai City, but there are less than 400 recorded." "Are they all killers?" Li Tianlan asked. If this was the case, Sai City was definitely a very terrible force. What did 400 well-trained professional killers mean? Perhaps in a large-scale war, the same number of killers was far less than the same number of soldiers. But in the dark, 400 professional killers were a nightmare for any force. On the scale of life and death, an assassin would always have an identity with infinite possibilities. Unlike martial arts, they did not even care about realms or battle prowess. For a true assassin, battle prowess was just a means to kill, nothing more. To kill, it was not necessary to rely on force. If there were really 400 professional killers, Li Tianlan's scalp tingled at the thought of that scene. If he stood on the opposite side of Sai City, not to mention the current Emperor Dong's palace, even if Emperor Dong's palace really surpassed the Wang family of Beihai in the future, he would suffer heavy losses in the face of hundreds of professional killers and scrupulous assassination. He might not be afraid of these. But he didn't know how many talents his Emperor Dong's palace would lose. Li Tianlan was lost in thought. That scene really had a trance power when he thought of it. No. Deep Dream interrupted Li Tianlan's fantasy. There are only about 40 real killers in Sai City, that is, those who have reached our graduation level. Among them, Sure and 10 others haven't completed enough tasks. As for the others, some are trained here, and there are some talents in other fields. No matter how aloof Sai City is, it's still a force. To maintain its operation, it can't only rely on a group of killers. The gap was really a little big. Li Tianlan, who was still thinking about the destructive power of 400 professional killers a moment ago, felt a little helpless when he heard Deep Dream's number. He looked around and suddenly asked, "How many people are here now?" "Very few." Deep Dream shook her head. "But Governor has issued a summon order. Most people will return to Mount Taibai before noon tomorrow. You can see them tomorrow, young Governor." Li Tianlan was silent for a moment, nodded, and repeated, "Tomorrow." "Well. Tomorrow." Deep Dream gave him a strange look but didn't say anything. She took Li Tianlan to a small, shabby palace and whispered, "His Highness and Deputy Governor are inside." "I won't go in. Deputy Governor never lets us in." Li Tianlan answered and knocked on the door. "Come in. Situtsanyue is quiet." A voice rang out from within the palace. Deep Dream stood motionless outside the palace, but her eyes were fixed on the interior of the palace. She was a little curious and obviously wanted to know what was inside. Li Tianlan thought for a moment, then pushed the door open and walked in. The palace was very small. The interior decorations were ridiculously simple. The small palace only had 2 floors. However, the second floor was completely sealed off. There was only a bed in the living room and nothing else. The hall was empty. Only the hard bed was there. Li Tianlan didn't even see any sofas, tables, or chairs in the hall. There was not even a single light in the hall. Under the curtain of night, in the darkness, the palace was so quiet that it seemed like a deserted place. Li Tianlan stood in the darkness and was completely speechless for a while. An empty palace and a small bed. When all of this was combined together, it actually brought him an indescribable shock. This was Tribulation's residence in Sai City. He was the deputy governor of Sai City. Throughout the year, for many years, he spent most of his time in this palace. 1 year, 5 years, or even 10 years. Except for Situ Xianxia, no one in Sai City had ever entered this palace, and no one would know what it looked like. It was like Tribulation's own world that he carefully guarded. It was empty, cold, and dark. Li Tianlan didn't feel lonely in it, but he clearly felt a kind of silence, as if his heart was dead. In silence, Li Tianlan took 2 steps forward. In front of the hard bed, Situ Xianxia, dressed in white, stood there, motionless. Tribulation lay on the bed, breathing weakly and also motionless. Li Tianlan hesitated for a moment, then broke the silence in front of him and whispered, "How is Marshal Uncle's injury?" "It's not getting better, nor is it getting worse." Situ Xianxia sighed softly. "I really don't know when he will wake up." Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes and seemed to hesitate again. "What do you want to say?" Situ Xianxia turned to look at him. The light in the palace was so dim that Li Tianlan couldn't see Situ Xianxia's expression. "I'm thinking if I should take Marshal Uncle to Tiannan. In the Wang family of Beihai, the Nailan family will send someone to treat him. If Marshal Uncle is there, the possibility of recovery will be greater." Li Tianlan told the truth. "The physician king family?" Situ Xianxia raised her eyebrows. Li Tianlan nodded and said nothing. "Okay." Situ Xianxia thought for a while and nodded. "I'll arrange it. I'll send him to Tiannan in a few days." "Okay." Li Tianlan nodded. "What do you think of Sai City?" Situ Xianxia glanced at her brother lying on the bed again, sighed tiredly, and asked casually. Li Tianlan walked to the bed in silence and looked at the silent snow outside the window. He didn't speak for a long time. Situ Xianxia came over and looked at Li Tianlan's expression. Against the white snow, his expression looked a little gloomy but extremely calm. It was an indescribable depth. Situ Xianxia's eyes were in a trance for a moment and she asked, "What are you thinking about?" "I'm thinking about a question." Li Tianlan said, "I'm the young governor of Sai City, but is Sai City still my Sai City now?" Chapter 667. Since becoming the young governor of Sai City, Li Tianlan and Situ Xianxia had not seen each other many times. There were a lot of phone calls between them. Whether it was through video call or phone call, Li Tianlan was always reserved, quiet, and silent, with a little bit of unobvious but extremely sincere gratitude. No one expected that when Li Tianlan officially entered Sai City this time, there would be such a scene. Situ Xianxia didn't expect it either. "Sai City, is it my Sai City?" In the darkness, Li Tianlan's voice was calm, but Situ Xianxia could clearly feel the sharp power behind the calmness. This was definitely a sharp and somewhat domineering question. In the almost empty hall, Tribulation lay there quietly. The darkness seemed to solidify, oppressive and heavy. Situ Xianxia looked at Li Tianlan's side face and was silent for a long time. Now, Li Tianlan was really different from before. She couldn't tell when the change began. Earlier, maybe it was the moment when he stood up again on Lonely Mountain after the final battle of Heaven Capital. Maybe it was the transformation of traveling thousands of miles in 3 years. Maybe it was the moment when he defeated Wang Xingxiao, Gu Hanshan, Jiang Shangyu, and Song Ci together in the final maneuver. Or it was when the Snowdance Corps set foot in Eastern Europe under his leadership. In the chaos of Eastern Europe, the invincible realm experts were crushed and killed by the general trend like nonentities. It was the moment when the eternal meteor in the sky above Mormons was completely extinguished. Or it was the moment when he swept all the way in Beihai and finally set foot on Mount Dibing. When did the change begin? Maybe the change had been going on all the time. However, Situ Xianxia ignored it. It seemed that everyone ignored it. On this day, Li Tianlan had been in the secular world for almost 4 years, but the time he stayed in the public was too little. His talent could be said to be astonishing, but his relatively weak strength always gave him a feeling of incomparable frailty when mixed in with the general trend. The Li family, the Wang family of Beihai, the Giant Group, the Samsara Palace, and Sai City. The final battle of Heaven Capital. The chaos of Eastern Europe. He had always been walking in the center of the general trend, but in the eye of the storm, there seemed to be a kind of power that had quietly shrouded him, causing his figure to become blurry. It was so blurry that he had almost left everyone's line of sight, so blurry that he did not even have much sense of existence. That kind of power was so subtle, yet it was everywhere. It was so careful, yet so affectionate. Situ Xianxia naturally knew where that kind of power came from, or who it came from. She was a piece of darkness, like the most mysterious veil. She had dragged Li Tianlan into the general trend where the wind and waves were the fiercest, but she had always firmly protected him, silently bearing all the shadows that wanted to devour Li Tianlan. Until the chaos in Eastern Europe. That sword strike had illuminated the entire world of darkness, ending this era that belonged to the Sword Emperor, which was filled with countless grievances. The veil that shrouded and protected Li Tianlan was completely broken with the shadows all over the sky. Li Tianlan walked out of the darkness and appeared clearly in everyone's sight. There were no longer any shadows in his sky. It was clear and boundless, bright and splendid. It seemed that Li Tianlan had appeared in everyone's sight for the first time. The heavenly light shone on the spirit-locking platform. The silver moon fell on the North Sea. He swept across Mount Dibbing, swallowed thousands of miles, and was invincible. At this moment, the eyes of the whole world seemed to be focused on Li Tianlan. His figure was extremely dazzling in this era. This was his era. Situ Xianxia suddenly had some doubts. She didn't understand whether Li Tianlan, who was so clear now, had always been like this, or he had slowly become like this. He had become so proactive. He took the initiative to come to Mount Dibbing and ask the sharpest question. At this moment, Situ Xianxia seemed to be able to feel Li Tianlan's mood. It was a kind of initiative that tried to grasp everything in his hands. He didn't want to passively endure anything anymore. He wanted to be in charge of everything. He became ambitious, sensitive, paranoid, and overbearing. Situ Xianxia thought quietly. In the silence, Li Tianlan had turned his eyes and his eyes fell on her face. Tian Yi had told him about the structure of the Purgatory of Heaven Capital when he was in Tongtian. This was a super force that had been secretly developed for many years. Its structure was extremely complete, and there were only 5 main and core institutions. Immortality, and Sun Luo had now completely appeared in front of the dark world. They represented the most terrifying combat capability and explosive power of the Purgatory of Heaven Capital. And hidden in the dark was Heaven's Fall and Heaven's Fall. Heaven's Fall was the top assassination organization. Heaven's Fall was the most detailed intelligence organization. Heaven's Fall Temple was Sai City. In the sequence of the Purgatory of Heaven Capital, Situ Xianxia was the master of Heaven's Fall Temple. Tian Yi once said that Heaven's Fall had been standing by Li Tianlan's side. But the Purgatory of Heaven Capital had always been Li Guangtu's Purgatory of Heaven Capital. And Situ Xianxia was Li Guangtu's woman. Li Tianlan didn't want to doubt anything. He took the initiative to come to Sai City because he wanted to know Situ Xianxia's attitude, as well as the attitude of the Heaven Fall Temple. As long as it was a clear attitude, any kind of attitude was okay. So he asked directly. Was Sai City still his Sai City? Situ Xianxia laughed. It was a kind of extremely clean beauty, without the traces of time, as clear as the snow on Mount Taibai. She reached out and touched Li Tianlan's hair, scratched his scalp, and said with a smile, "Little Tianlan, you came to Mount Taibai, but we didn't greet you with great fanfare. Are you angry?" Li Tianlan was stunned for a moment, and his face suddenly became extremely embarrassed. "You are the young governor of Sai City. Coming here means going home. Have you ever seen anyone who needs to be greeted by his family when he comes home? Situ Xianxia continued. I didn't mean that. Li Tianlan took a deep breath, turned his head to look out of the window, and was silent for a long time. His expression gradually calmed down. Sai City, Heaven Fall Temple, his voice was low and calm. Situ Xianxia's body shook slightly for a moment, and she raised her eyebrows in surprise. I am the young governor of Sai City. What am I to the Heaven Fall Temple? He said slowly, what am I to the entire purgatory of Heaven Capital? Situ Xianxia was silent for a long time. Then she sighed softly and did not speak. I am grateful for what Sai City has done for me. I am grateful from the bottom of my heart. Li Tianlan whispered, Auntie, I came here today to ask for an answer. Is Sai City mine or his? No matter what the answer is, I can accept it. Even if Sai City is not mine, we will not be enemies in the future. His. Li Tianlan didn't say who he was referring to, but Situ Xianxia naturally knew. Situ Xianxia smiled bitterly. She didn't want to answer such a question, and even instinctively resisted it. Her voice was a little helpless, and she whispered, why do you have to make it so clear? The Li family is my Li family. Li Tianlan said. He said this sentence firmly and unquestionably. The Li family was stubborn. It was not only Li Guangtu who was stubborn. Now the Li family was his, and it didn't belong to anyone else. It's his, and it's yours. Why do you do this? He is still recuperating in Yuzhou. When he wakes up, you can have a good talk. If the Li family is temporarily supported by him, you will be much more relaxed, and... Before Situ Xianxia finished her words, she had been interrupted by Li Tianlan. There's nothing to talk about. He whispered, I won't let him support the Li family, neither will Grandpa. Why? Situ Xianxia asked. Li Tianlan looked at the snow outside the window. After a long silence, he said, because he doesn't deserve it. Li Tianlan. Li Guangtu. The Li family. In their eyes, they didn't deserve it. This sentence was as calm as he said it. He wanted to save Li Guangtu and Mormons. He destroyed blue sky, underworld and falling stars. He called the master of Samsara Palace a bitch, and Lin Fengting was even injured. All these were to save Li Guangtu. Because Li Guangtu's surname was Li. That was all. Situ Xianxia couldn't say a word for a long time. He didn't deserve it. She quietly thought about it and suddenly felt extremely sad. Li Tianlan said these two words very calmly, but behind that calmness, there was indeed a kind of calmness and indifference after suffering all kinds of grievances. Li Tianlan looked out of the window and whispered, it's a beautiful place. I like it here. Situ Xianxia smiled bitterly and didn't speak. Li Tianlan looked at her and waited for her answer. The answer is actually the most boring thing. Situ Xianxia said slowly. But many answers are very important to me. Li Tianlan looked at Situ Xianxia's face seriously. Situ Xianxia was silent for a moment and said calmly, I can't give you the answer you want, or even if I have the answer, it may not be what you want. Li Tianlan's heart sank for a moment, and he subconsciously glanced at Tribulation in a coma. He didn't speak and waited quietly. It's true that you are the young governor of Sai City. Situ Xianxia said, it's also true that he is the master of the purgatory of Heaven Capital. As for whether Sai City belongs to you or not, I can't answer this question. She said slowly, you should go to Lin and ask Senior Li. Li Tianlan froze for a moment and suddenly remembered that he seemed to have not contacted his grandfather recently. Even when he swept the entire Beihai province, he did not receive a call from Lin. Situ Xianxia didn't have the final say on the problem of Sai City. Li Honghe had the final say. This kind of answer was really boring. Li Tianlan was quiet for a moment. Just when Situ Xianxia thought he had nothing to say, he suddenly said, Auntie. Situ Xianxia was a little confused. Li Tianlan turned his head and looked at her eyes seriously. The doubt in her eyes was genuine. Do you have children? Li Tianlan asked. Situ Tsanyue's eyes changed. She turned her head and said calmly, no. I've actually checked a lot of information. Li Tianlan whispered, my grandfather has a child, Li Kuangtu. I'm grandpa's grandson. He whispered, Li Kuangtu has had many women, but only 3 have been with him all the time. One is you, one is the phantom sword master of Mount Shu, and the last one is Li Shi, who has been with him for the longest time. If my surname is really Li, I am the child of the Li family. He said slowly, Li Kuangtu is my father. He looked at Situ Tsanyue and said, you are not my mother, nor is Yin Qinshi. In Situ Tsanyue's slightly changed expression, his voice sounded, my mother is Li Shi? Chapter 668. Li Shi was Li Tianlan's mother. If that was the case, that was really a sad story. Many years ago, the Li family was brilliant. Many years ago, Li Kuangtu was high-spirited. Many years ago, Zhuanyuantai was ambitious. Everything in that year, no matter how the Wang family of Beihai planned the treason case, no matter how insidious Kunlun City used, it was the sword that Li Shi stabbed into Li Kuangtu's chest that drew the final end to the treason case. The Li family fell from the clouds to the dust. This was a falling out between husband and wife. When the Li family declined, the purgatory of heaven capital was dormant, and Li Kuangtu was dormant. When Li Tianlan slowly walked up with the Li family on his back, it was the Samsara palace that helped him block the countless killing intents of the purgatory of heaven capital. Li Kuangtu thought that Li Tianlan was not worthy of owning the Li family. Li Tianlan thought so too. Even if this was not a father and son killing each other, at least it was a very dark beginning. At the last moment of the final battle of heaven capital, when Li Tianlan forced himself into the invincible sword light, the woman who stabbed him in the heart was Li Shi. Li Kuangtu. Li Shi. Li Tianlan. If this was really a family of 3, how dark would their past and future be? Situ Tsanyue looked at Li Tianlan in silence. She looked at him pitifully and sympathetically. Li Tianlan stood there quietly, and there was only a kind of indifferent silence in his eyes. Is it true? He asked. I don't know. Situ Tsanyue told the truth. She really didn't know Li Tianlan's background. Perhaps many people knew that the Li family had a daughter who died young. But the problem was that no one had seen the child. No one knew if the child had really died. All the records of the hospital were erased. People knew that it was Li Shi's child. But whether it was a boy or a girl, whether it was alive or dead, or even how many children there were similar camouflage tricks in the dark world almost every year. Who knew what was going on except those involved? Perhaps only Li Shi, Li Kuangtu, and Li Honghe knew all this. Li Shi returned to Kunlun City and said that she had given birth to a daughter who had died young. With her strength at the peak of the invincible realm, her willingness to return was already loyal. How could Gu Xingyan ask anything else? Not to mention at that time, even now, Li Shi was the top expert in Kunlun City. Although Situ Tsanyue had been secretly cooperating with Li Honghe, she had never asked about such a thing, and Li Honghe had never mentioned it. So he really didn't know. Li Tianlan remained silent. He did not know the real answer. But all the signs indicated that this seemed to be the only answer. In the past 3 generations of the Li family, Li Honghe only had one son, Li Kuangtu. Li Honghe was his grandfather, so it was self-evident who his father was. For this reason, since he came back from Eastern Europe, he had never contacted Li Honghe except for making a phone call to Linton. Li Shi. Li Shi, Li Tianlan smiled. How miserable. He said softly. The corners of Situ Tsanyue's mouth moved, but she did not speak. Just like Li Tianlan. She didn't know Li Tianlan's background, but at this time, she couldn't think of any other possibility. There's nothing we can't face. Situ Tsanyue was silent for a long time, and then said softly, Tianlan, after all, we are a family. Many things, even if it involves life and death, may be misunderstandings. After going back and talking to them, many knots may be untied. Even if your speculation is true, there must be a reason for it to happen. The reason is not important. Li Tianlan shook his head. I don't need any explanation. It's not important. I can go to Beihai and anywhere else. He pointed his finger forward and said with a chuckle, Auntie, what do you think that is? Situ Sanyue looked along his palm. Mount Taibai was extremely quiet. The wind and snow surrounded the night, and the summer stars hung in the sky. They stood on the top of the mountain and looked down. The snow, the night, and the stars. As far as the eye could see, there were endless lights. Situ Sanyue was in a daze, and her heart was in a mess. She suddenly found that it had been many years since she stood in such a position to look at Mount Taibai and the distance. What is that? Situ Sanyue asked in a mess. The world. Li Tianlan's pupils were like burning flames, with a temperature that was enough to burn everything. My world. I don't care what happened before, and I don't care about my background. I think about these questions just because I need to tell myself that no matter who my parents are, the Li family is mine. He said quietly, no one can take away my things. He patted the windowsill and whispered, this place is also mine. Situ Sanyue did not give him an answer. But he gave himself an answer. Everyone thought that what they believed in was the truth. So did Li Tianlan. Situ Sanyue looked at him quietly for a long time. Vaguely, she seemed to perceive Li Tianlan's purpose of coming here. How are your injuries? Li Tianlan turned to look at Situ Sanyue and asked softly. Not bad. Situ Sanyue whispered, I'm afraid it will be difficult for me to recover my peak combat capability in a short time. After so many years, it's rare for me to rest and relax. Maybe I can make a breakthrough in martial arts if I relax my mind. A breakthrough. With Situ Sanyue's current realm, if she made another breakthrough, she would be close to the peak of the invincible realm. I have a suggestion. Li Tianlan suddenly said. Situ Sanyue looked at him quietly for a long time. Her eyes were extremely bright, as if she could see through Li Tianlan's heart. Go ahead. It was simple. Her voice was neither salty nor light. Li Tianlan turned his eyes away from Situ Sanyue and said calmly, Auntie's injury is too serious, and Martial Uncle's injury can't be improved for the time being. After all, Mount Taibai is too cold. I want you to go to the south to recuperate for a period of time, and come back when your injury is better. The south? Situ Sanyue tilted her head and looked at Li Tianlan with a faint smile. The south. Li Tianlan nodded. Tiannan? Situ Sanyue asked. There was no disappointment or anger in her tone, but some complexity. If Auntie thinks Tiannan is too far, Jianghu is also fine. Li Tianlan said calmly. Tiannan was the territory that Li Tianlan was about to open up. And Jianghu. Although Li Honghe was in charge of Jianghu, the powerful figure who really controlled the overall situation of Jianghu was Zhou Yuanshan, the governor of Jianghu. In other words, these two places were under Li Tianlan's absolute control. What this meant was self-evident. What about Sai City after I leave? Situ Sanyue sighed softly. Her hunch was extremely accurate. Although she was not angry, she still felt a little self-deprecating. Li Tianlan was silent for a while. He still did not look at Situ Sanyue, but said calmly, Sai City will be fine. One of cool breeze and drifting cloud can be transferred back. In addition, I will communicate with Saint. When I am in Tiannan, he will take care of Sai City. He was talking about Saint. Not Wei Kunlun. Although the two identities were it was just one person, but it had an unusual meaning. The latter was the sword master of Mount Shu. The former was the deputy palace lord of Emperor Dong's palace. How long can Saint take care of it? Situ Sanyue looked into Li Tianlan's eyes. A long time. Li Tianlan said quietly. His voice was steady, and his expression was calm. But at this moment, in the darkness, he gave people a feeling of extreme coldness. Enough to take care of martial uncle's injury. Situ Xianxia laughed. At this moment, she completely understood what Li Tianlan meant. If Wanjia's injury can't be healed, will I have to stay in the south for the rest of my life and never come back? Situ Xianxia asked softly. Li Tianlan's hand grabbed the wooden windowsill. After a long time, he said lightly, the weather in the south is very good. Situ Xianxia did not say much. She was Li Guangtu's woman. Obviously, Li Tianlan did not trust her now. All the previous questions were just a foreshadowing. Li Tianlan already had his own plans in his heart. He was going to take her to the south. It was just a way of saying that she was under house arrest or recuperation. Now, he was the young governor of Sai City. With her departure, the power of Sai City would naturally be concentrated in his hands. Li Tianlan came to Sai City for the power of Sai City. And he was not going to return the power that he had taken away to Situ Xianxia. It was still the same sentence. Li Tianlan did not trust her. He trusted Tribulation. Therefore, after Tribulation's injury was healed, he would become the real governor of Sai City. Situ Xianxia did not know whether Li Tianlan had planned to do this before he knew the truth about the Heaven Parish Hall. But obviously, after knowing that the Heaven Parish Hall was Sai City and the power of the Li family, Li Tianlan, who had always thought that the Li family belonged to him, no longer hesitated to do these things. If he didn't trust them, he would take them away. No matter who they were. Suspicious, sensitive, straightforward, decisive, and cold. He was a real ambitious man. Situ Xianxua's heart was a little complicated, but also indescribably gratified. Even if Li Tianlan was now clearly telling her that he was going to take away the power that belonged to her. I can listen to your arrangement, but you must know that I am different here than in the south. Situ Xianxia said slowly, even if I have no combat capability, not many people dare to act rashly here. But if I leave, Tianlan, do you really understand the current situation? What do you mean, Auntie? Li Tianlan asked softly. Jianghu State and the Wang family of Beihai. Situ Xianxia said calmly. It's not a good thing to be too independent. Li Tianlan's tone was indifferent. That's true. Situ Xianxia said softly, but the Wang family of Beihai is used to being free. Who is willing to put shackles on their necks? So the next step must be the most intense game. Sai City in the north is the most important. Li Tianlan was silent. He suddenly remembered that at the beginning of the chaos in Eastern Europe, the Wang family of Beihai had obtained the military power of the Black Dragon army located in the northeast in the deal with the giant group, and even obtained the leadership of the Longjiang province. Today's Longjiang province could be said to be the world of the Wang family of Beihai. Combined with the current situation. Could it be that Wang Tianzong had prepared for the worst before the chaos in Eastern Europe officially began? After signing the Flying Bird Agreement, Snow Country is already the territory of the Wang family of Beihai. Situ Xianxia reminded him. North, Snow Country, Longjiang, Black Dragon Army. Beihai Province. The instantly connected information lit up Li Tianlan's mind like a bolt of lightning. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows and asked, do they dare? Chapter 669. Before everything officially started, no one could answer Li Tianlan's question. But for anyone involved in the game, this was a question that they had to start thinking about seriously. Games needed skills. The bigger the situation involved, the more skills and even the real wisdom were needed. Advance and retreat, balance, compromise, and countless subtle details were enough to affect the outcome of the game. Li Tianlan knew what Jianghu State wanted to do. He also knew what the Wang family of Beihai wanted to do in the face of Jianghu State's actions. The key was whether they dared to do it or not. Not only the Wang family of Beihai. It also included Jianghu State. Did Jianghu State dare to do it? Did the Wang family of Beihai dare to do it? When the two sides really competed, every advance and retreat was tantamount to testing each other's bottom line. This was destined to be a very complicated and incomparably long process. But Li Tianlan, who could roughly guess Wang Tianzong's injury, was very clear that Jianghu state now had plenty of time. So the most critical question was whether the Wang family of Beihai dared to do it or not. It depends on what Jianghu does. Situ Tsangyue thought for a long time and then said calmly. Li Tianlan was silent. No one thought there was anything wrong with the change of the speaker of Longjiang province at that time. At that time, everyone thought it was the Wang family of Beihai's weakening of Sai City. Who could have thought that at that time, Wang Tianzong had already prepared for this? Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes. Do they have this strength? You can question anything. Situ Tsangyue said, but you absolutely can't question the strength of the Wang family of Beihai. Especially the comprehensive strength. This kind of super-rich family with hundreds of years of inheritance has experienced too many things. You alone swept Mount Dibbing and even almost got on the stage a formidable person. Although it is a shame, it may not be a big deal. At least in these hundreds of years, this is certainly not the most difficult time for the Wang family of Beihai. Such a family can survive so many ups and downs, their foundation can be said to be really unfathomable. In the past, no one who questioned the strength of the Wang family of Beihai would have a good end. She hesitated and slowly said, including Guangtu in those days. How high-spirited was Li Guangtu in those days? When victory was in his grasp, the Wang family of Beihai finally turned the tables. Perhaps many people did not like Li Guangtu, but no one dared to say that he was a fool. He was scheming, ambitious, and ready to make trouble. He thought that he had seen through everything of the Wang family of Beihai. What was the result? It was the Li family that fell from the clouds to the dust. The Wang family of Beihai still stood at the top and could not be shaken. Li Guangtu's failure might be due to his ambition, but it was definitely not due to his stupidity. He just didn't see the strength of the Wang family of Beihai clearly. They are indeed powerful. Li Tianlan nodded. He never denied it. The 200,000-strong army of the North Sea Legion was unstoppable. The thousands of people in the North Sea province were united. He still remembered that promise to His Majesty, Sword Emperor. But their strength might not be enough to support their actions. Don't forget how the North Sea province came to be. Situ Tsangyue said silently, even if you grew up on the border, Boss Li should have told you about the history of Jianghu state, right? History of Jianghu state. Li Tianlan froze for a moment. During the hundreds of years since the founding of the People's Republic, the history of Jianghu state was extremely exciting. The Wang family of Beihai had been described in history books countless times about their strength and foundation. Even many influential events were directly related to them. How did the North Sea province come to be? The North Sea province had 150,000 square kilometers of land and was the youngest province in Jianghu state. The history of the North Sea province could even be said to be the most exciting part in the history of Jianghu state, at least one of the most exciting parts. It was a legend about the Chosen One. Holy State of Beihai, Queen City, Floating Island City, Lioli City. With the Kanglan River as the boundary, it was the northern end of the North Sea province today. Before the founding of Jianghu state, it was also the land of Jianghu state, but after the founding, it was occupied by Snow Country. The Chosen One ancestor of the Wang family of Beihai, who was still in the history books, united with the Rothschild family at that time and used all means to take this land back from Snow Country, forming half of the Wang family of Beihai today. The land of the three cities south of the Kanglan River, Kanglan, Tongtian, and Choshui still belonged to East Island during that time. During that period, the Wang family of Beihai, which had completely gained a foothold, could be said to really look down on the world. In their most glorious period, there was not only the Chosen One ancestor of the Wang family of Beihai, but also a brilliant figure whose combat capability was no weaker than his. That was the founder of Zhuanyuantai, and also Li Tianlan's founder. Those decades were incomparably glorious times. The light of the Wang family of Beihai shone on the whole dark world. The land that belonged to East Island was forcibly taken down by the two people and formed the present Wang family of Beihai until today. It was also an era full of deceit and games. At that time, the Wang family of Beihai had to face Snow Country, East Island, Jianghu State, and countless forces. At that time, the comprehensive strength of the Wang family of Beihai was not as good as it was now. But its high-end combat capability was far more than it was now. And most importantly, the current Wang family of Beihai did not need to face Snow Country. Their game with Jianghu State would be more naked. If the worst happens, what will the result be? Li Tianlan suddenly asked in a low voice. Who knows? Situ Tsanyue sighed softly, feeling a little tired. She looked at Li Tianlan and said, the task from the office of the president and the army headquarters should be coming soon. Whoever is here will take the task. Tianlan, are you sure you want me to go south? Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows, and a touch of sharpness flashed through his eyes. Now the Wang family of Beihai had basically controlled the overall situation of Longjiang base city. Longjiang and Beihai faced each other across the sea. Now that the Black Dragon army was in the hands of the Wang family of Beihai, the barrier of Longjiang province was in the hands of Beihai province. It was not until this moment that Li Tianlan understood why the Black Dragon army, which had been brought to Eastern Europe by Dongqing Wudi, had not returned home. It wasn't that the warriors of the Black Dragon army weren't trusted. It was because some of the leaders of the Black Dragon army had changed their stance. Had the situation become so sensitive? Li Tianlan thought silently. The current situation could even be said to be on the verge of breaking out. Him sweeping through the North Sea province was a clear signal. Jianghu State's action against Beihai would begin soon. No one would think of destroying Beihai, but as the world's most powerful country, in the face of the Wang family of Beihai's repeated criticism, even if it was unconsciously, they could not tolerate it. Now with this opportunity, Jianghu State would definitely take action to weaken the autonomy and independence of the Wang family of Beihai. Beihai province was a province, and could only be a province. Not the Beihai family. Nor was it a certain country. Undoubtedly, the Wang family of Beihai could not tolerate such a situation. They would fight and play, but Jianghu State was powerful. If Beihai really couldn't stand it, what would they do? Would they grit their teeth and compromise? Or would they grit their teeth and resist? Jianghu State was afraid of the Wang family of Beihai's resistance. And the Wang family of Beihai also knew that their final resistance was their biggest trump card. Longjiang was in the hands of the Wang family of Beihai. Liaodong, where Sai City was located, was connected to Longjiang and Snow Country. Snow Country had now become a puppet in the hands of the Wang family of Beihai. Once the Wang family of Beihai really went crazy, more than 200,000 troops of the Beihai Corps would sweep through the Longjiang province and enter Liaodong in an instant. If Snow Country was willing to cooperate, it could completely destroy Sai City, join with the Beihai Corps, and sweep through Guangdong from Liaodong. How large was the area of the three northeastern provinces? It was 800,000 square kilometers. It was as large as several Beihai, larger than the land area of most countries in the world. Once the Wang family of Beihai fell out with Jianghu State, they could even establish a country after controlling the three northeastern provinces. And it would be a real, veritable big country. Jianghu State could not allow such a thing. But the Wang family of Beihai also had a trump card. Jianghu State was a country with nuclear weapons. And as a part of Jianghu State, the Wang family of Beihai was also a province with nuclear weapons. And nuclear weapons were under the control of the Wang family of Beihai. The number of nuclear weapons in Beihai might not be enough to destroy the world, but if it was really a life and death struggle, it was enough to destroy most of the territory of Jianghu State. Corpses were everywhere, blood flowed like a river, and it was a purgatory on earth. Everyone could clearly see this problem. So such a game was destined to be extremely dangerous. Neither Jianghu State nor Beihai wanted to go to this step. This also doomed this game to be a long time. But in difficult times, Jianghu State also had to fight. Especially when Jianghu State clearly felt this kind of danger, Jianghu State had to go up to control the nuclear weapons of the Wang family of Beihai. This was the bottom line of Jianghu State. But on the other hand, this was also the bottom line of the Wang family of Beihai. In such a situation, in order to avoid the worst result, Sai City, with its special position, was bound to bear an unimaginable burden. Such a Sai City had even become a place of contention for military power. Li Tianlan took a deep breath and whispered, "If this is the case, you and Marshal Uncle shouldn't stay here." Situ Tsanyue was stunned. "Go to the south," Li Tianlan said. Situ Tsanyue's eyes quietly warmed for a moment. When she proposed to go to the south before, it was because Li Tianlan didn't trust her. But now, he proposed it because he cared about her. Situ Tsanyue smiled and whispered, "Okay." She paused and continued, "But you can't be careless. It's hard for Wanjie to recover from his injury, and Saint can't stay in Sai City. If you are in Tiannan, how should Sai City deal with itself? You should think about it. If the Wang family of Beihai goes crazy and this place becomes a breakthrough, the future of the Li family, it's okay." Li Tianlan was silent for a while and said quietly, "Even if Marshal Uncle can't recover for the time being, even if you and Saint are not here, even if I am in Tiannan, Sai City is still invincible." In the dark, Li Tianlan stretched out his palm. An incomparably dazzling and resplendent rainbow light suddenly bloomed from his palm. The sword intent all over the sky rolled up the flying snow outside the window in an instant, extremely messy. Situ Tsanyue tightened her body completely out of instinct. Her eyes were fixed on Li Tianlan's palm. A small sword with a brilliant color and an incomparably exquisite and perfect shape spun continuously in his hand. Indifferent, proud, and awe-inspiring. At this moment, Li Tianlan almost had no sense of existence. But this spinning little sword brought Situ Tsanyue a kind of unparalleled danger. Li Tianlan's palm moved. The little sword spinning in his palm rose in an instant, bringing up flying snow all over the sky. The shining sword energy of thousands of meters tore the night sky. It was like a long rainbow. The dazzling sword light crossed the whole Sai City, kept flying, and finally landed at the end of Sai City. It stood straight in the snow, facing the direction of snow country, becoming more and more quiet and proud. "This is the startling sword. It will protect Sai City and the north end of Jianghu State on our behalf," Li Tianlan said. "The 13th floor. Startling sword." Situ Tsanyue looked at him quietly, her eyes extremely complicated. At this moment, her mind was full of the words that Deep Dream brought to her after returning from Yuzhou. The silver moonlight moved Beihai. Startling sword shone on Jianghu State. She didn't expect that the first sword of the second sentence would land here. The most suitable place. Chapter 670. At dusk, Qin Weibai sent off the last group of guests of Prince Yang's mansion with a smile and elegantly gathered the hair on her forehead. She wore a dignified and simple light-colored cheongsam, and her once loose black hair was tied into a ponytail. She stood in front of the gate of the ancient prince's mansion without any makeup, facing the approaching dusk. She was indifferent, but with an indescribable beauty and holiness. That touch of white, which had once filled the dark world, was aloof, cold, and powerful. Now it seemed that she really came to the world for the first time. Because she was willing, the mystery began to disappear little by little, but the calm and even wise temperament became more and more perfect. She just stood there. She was graceful, quiet and calm, elegant and delicate, and calm. She had skin of ice and bones of jade, a fairy-like appearance, and was extremely beautiful and peerless. From inside to outside, she had no shortcomings. The afterglow of the setting sun devoured the remaining light between heaven and earth. Less than 10 meters behind Qin Weibai, Flaming Fire stood there, looking at the perfect back with extremely cold eyes. Flaming Fire woke up yesterday, when Li Tianlan officially left Beihai and entered Liaodong from Longjiang to Sai City. Her extremely weak breath was actually not seriously injured. It could even be said that she was one of the least injured invincible realm experts in the chaos of Eastern Europe. As many outsiders guessed, Flaming Fire just woke up and went to Qin Weibai's side. Although she didn't have much combat power for the time being, her attitude seemed to have fully demonstrated that she was still loyal to Qin Weibai. But no one knew that Flaming Fire had never said a word to Qin Weibai since she came to her side. The dim yellow light in the sky gradually disappeared. At the moment when day and night alternated, a gust of wind blew over Prince Yang's mansion. The autumn wind went all the way north, rolling up the flowers, plants, and green leaves in the prince's mansion. Flaming Fire raised her head and glanced at it expressionlessly. The space was twisting and deforming quietly. All the way forward, she passed by Flaming Fire without most people in the prince's mansion noticing. The autumn wind between heaven and earth stopped beside Flaming Fire for a moment. Flaming Fire nodded indifferently. As if she had said hello, the autumn wind gradually dissipated, leaving no trace. Qin Weibai turned around and happened to see Flaming Fire nodding. She smiled and took the initiative to say, "Is he here?" Flaming Fire glanced at her and nodded. Then closed the door. Qin Weibai's voice was soft and unhurried, with a hint of exhaustion. "I won't be seeing any guests today." The Prince of Yang's residence had guests every day. From the day Li Tianlan destroyed the Tang family in Yuzhou but Zhongzhou state remained silent, the first group of guests came to visit. Heavenly Light Spirit Lock Platform. More and more people came to the Prince of Yang's residence, and their statuses grew higher and higher. It had only been 2 days since Li Tianlan left Mount Dibbing, and the people who came to Prince Yang's mansion almost had to line up. It was impossible for them not to know that they couldn't see Li Tianlan here. But they all scrambled to come here to show their attitude, and at the same time, brought valuable gifts. It was impossible for her to satisfy everyone, but she tried her best not to disappoint them. Her methods were calm and natural. It was the first time for most people to see this famous goddess. She was not cold and aloof, nor was she arrogant and detached from the crowd. Her every move could be said to be impeccable. Although everyone who left did not get the promise Qin Weibai made on behalf of Li Tianlan, most of them gained something. As more and more people came to visit, Qin Weibai's name gradually spread, so more uneasy people began to come to visit her. In just a few days' time, Qin Weibai's name had been spread out, so more people began to visit her with uneasiness. In just a few days, many people already knew that Prince Yang's mansion had a beautiful but good-tempered hostess who was easy to get along with. Flaming Fire witnessed all this in one day. Her eyes were getting colder and colder. Seeing that Qin Weibai was about to close the door, she suddenly said, "Don't close the door." The decision that had been hesitating for a long time seemed to become clear and certain at this moment. She took a deep breath and whispered, "I'm leaving." Qin Weibai was stunned and looked at Flaming Fire. She was silent for a while, then chuckled, "Isn't it good to stay with me? I don't want to be a shadow anymore." Flaming Fire said quietly, "And I can't keep up with your pace." "It's the same." Qin Weibai said calmly, "It's the same." "It's not the same." Flaming Fire's voice was full of persistence. "You know it yourself. It's obviously the same." Qin Weibai's voice was also full of persistence. Flaming Fire did not speak. This question was actually meaningless. Whether it was the same or not, in her heart, it was different. Then it was different. "I'm leaving," she said. In fact, she could have left Yuzhou when she had just woken up. However, coming here first and then leaving was completely different from leaving without saying goodbye. Coming here first and then leaving, at least Qin Weibai could have an explanation to the outside world. As long as Flaming Fire did not deny it, this explanation was true. Flaming Fire did not want to deny anything. She did not care what others thought. She only cared about one thing. That was different. He was truly different. Flaming Fire raised her head and looked at the lights under the night sky. Suddenly, she felt that the whole world was so strange. It was as if she had lost her pillar. She lost her direction and felt a little lonely. Qin Weibai's voice rang out, "Where are you going?" Flaming Fire was silent for a long time. After all, she still remembered a lot of things. She remembered that she often got up early to collect morning dew for her boss. She remembered the coffee she made for her boss in the middle of the night. She remembered the fruit she cut for her boss. She remembered the two of them flying all over the world. They met different people and encountered different dangers. She remembered the first time they met. She remembered that she told her about Li Tianlan with a smile. She talked about destiny and the past, but she did not talk about the future. There was no future. There would be no more. Flaming Fire's eyes were red. The suffocating pain in her heart twisted, with a kind of tearing feeling. She said it was the same. Maybe it was the same. But how could it be the same? In the night, Flaming Fire quickly raised her hand and said in a hoarse voice, "Go to Northern Europe." Most of the time, she was Flaming Fire. Most of the time, she was also the master of Samsara Palace. No matter who she was, when the pillar in her heart collapsed, she finally remembered Northern Europe. In that chaos, there was a man who had silently loved her for many years. The man was willing to throw out the murderous weapon to protect Li Tianlan for the will of herself and Samsara Palace, and he was seriously injured. Northern Europe was now in turmoil. The dark nights were surging with undercurrents. Flaming Fire felt that it was necessary to sort out his dark nights for him when she lost her direction. She walked out of the door and looked back at Qin Weibai. Qin Weibai stood inside the door, surrounded by a flourishing field of flowers and plants. The light of the street lamps outside the prince's mansion fell on Flaming Fire. It seemed warm, but it was extremely cold. The inside and outside the door seemed to be separated into two worlds by the bleak autumn. It was the past and the future, or something else. "Goodbye," Flaming Fire said softly. Her voice paused, and then she said, "It's better not to see you again. You know why the guests come these days, and you know why there are so many guests today." Qin Weibai said, "Because Tianlan fought through the whole Beihai. In this era, he is almost invincible. Because of Emperor Dong's palace, because Wei Kunlun, a new invincible realm expert in Zhongzhou State, is the palace master of Emperor Dong's palace, and because of you, you are also an invincible realm expert. Now in everyone's mind, there are 3 invincible realm experts in Emperor Dong's palace. You stay, and we will strengthen Emperor Dong's palace together. Isn't it good? Maybe it's good." Flaming Fire was silent for a long time, and then she said softly, "But after that sword move in Eastern Europe, all this has nothing to do with me." Qin Weibai's eyes calmed down, becoming deep and bright. She asked her to stay. Flaming Fire refused. This was the truth. The truth could not be changed. So she nodded. "So, then, goodbye." Anyway, she laughed. "You are a very good assistant, no, the best assistant. Thank you for taking care of me." Flaming Fire's eyes suddenly became cold, and even a little angry. "I don't need your thanks." She stared into Qin Weibai's eyes and said word by word. "There's no difference." Qin Weibai sighed softly and looked at Flaming Fire. There was understanding, sympathy, and a trace of sadness in her eyes. "You know better than anyone that it's the same, exactly the same." "Is it the same?" Flaming Fire's eyes became excited. She tried to smile, but it was extremely cold and even a little sad. "You always think it's the same? So you can enjoy that fools love and care for you with a clear conscience, enjoy everything in the future, command military counselor and saint with a clear conscience, be yourself with a clear conscience, and even say thank you to me with a clear conscience?" Qin Weibai looked at her quietly for a long time. Flaming Fire stood there straight, looking at Qin Weibai, and persistently waiting for her answer. Her answer was so powerful and so true, but for Flaming Fire, it was so heartbreaking. "It all belongs to me. Why can't I feel at ease?" Qin Weibai asked. This was her answer. Flaming Fire could not refute anything. Therefore, she could only stand there and keep sneering. She remembered a lot of things. Memories were like knives, cutting everything in the past with the cruelest strength and indifference. All the past was fragmented. It was all hers. Why couldn't she feel at ease? What was she obsessed with? It all belonged to her. Maybe I haven't done well enough. I can accept questions from any aspect. Even if you are in Northern Europe, you can also question what I will do next. Qin Weibai whispered, but there is one thing that none of you can question me. She looked at flaming fire proudly, cold and strong. Flawless. What belongs to me is mine. This is a fact. You can't question it. She looked at flaming fire and whispered, because you are not qualified. Climax. Chapter 671. The autumn wind in the twilight blew through the mansion and opened the antique door of the main hall of the mansion. Wisps of sword chi that did not seem strong but were extremely dense spread out in the main hall, silently covering the entire path from the main hall to the prince's mansion. In the main hall, Saint, who was meditating, opened his eyes. Looking at the autumn wind in the darkness, he nodded. His sword intent was still extending forward, gentle but incomparably resolute. You don't trust her? A light and gentle voice suddenly sounded in the autumn wind. The space, which had been wrinkled by the wind, became calm again. Military counselor, who was dressed in black, walked out of the darkness and walked to the bedside. The window beside the bed was half closed. Through a small gap, military counselor stood there, looking at the blurry figures of Qin Weibai and flaming fire in the distance. This scene was a little wretched. But military counselor was watching with great concentration. Who? Saint asked. It was not that he knew the answer, but he really did not know who the military counselor was asking about. Military counselor was silent for a while. He did not seem to know who he was referring to. After a long time, flaming fire walked out of the gate of the mansion. Flaming fire is trustworthy. Military counselor said slowly, his voice a little complicated. Of course I know that. Saint laughed at himself and said, but now she is courting death. Even if flaming fire is trustworthy, it is inevitable that she will be impulsive. If she really takes action, she really doesn't know martial arts. Military counselor did not speak. After the chaos in Eastern Europe, the Samsara palace could be said to have been completely destroyed. Less than 1/10 of the combatants survived. Most of them died in the strangulation of Mormons. More than half of the 12 super masters died, and so did the master of the Samsara palace. Now, in their small group, perhaps only military counselor could really understand flaming fire's feelings. Because they were the ones who would never betray him. Flaming fire wants to leave. What do you think? Military counselor suddenly asked. Saint was a little surprised. Did she contact you? What's the connection between something that's already destined? Military counselor shook his head. Do you really think she can stay here now? Saint was silent for a long time before he said slowly, it's good that he left. The outside world won't know this news for the time being. Flaming fire will cooperate with our publicity. For a short time, just treat her as an invincible realm expert hiding in the dark. Military counselor said. Saint nodded in acknowledgement. How's your realm? Military counselor suddenly asked. Saint was stunned for a moment and then said, no problem. In the chaos of Eastern Europe, the general trend was intertwined. In that chaotic situation, the breakthrough of Saint was actually very urgent, but he had accumulated enough experience over the years, so his breakthrough could be said to be natural. Now, as long as he could stabilize his realm, he could go all the way up in the shortest time possible. His real combat capability could even catch up with the peak of the invincible realm. Dongsheng Huangtu's notebook did give him great inspiration. The sword energy of the current Nirvana sword master was thicker than before. It could be said that it had already surpassed the swordsmanship of Mount Shu. But the only problem was that it also took time to completely stabilize the realm of the invincible realm. The saints didn't know how long they would need, but at least for now, they didn't lack time. In the darkness, Flaming Fire's somewhat excited question came faintly along with the night wind. Military counselor and Saint stopped talking. He did not show himself either. Both of them just quietly observed the confrontation between Flaming Fire and Qin Weibai. Qin Weibai's voice was calm and composed. Just as Flaming Fire said. He felt at ease. They heard Qin Weibai's final answer. You don't have the qualifications. The two of them were speechless. Flaming Fire was also speechless. In the long silence, Flaming Fire didn't say anything. She slowly turned around and slowly disappeared outside the door of the prince's mansion under the cold autumn light. Qin Weibai stood there alone, but she looked more and more perfect and firm. She's right. Saint suddenly said, we're not qualified. And, it's always the same. Military counselor stood in front of the window and watched Qin Weibai turn around and walk over. He remained silent and did not speak. The ubiquitous sword intent in the prince's mansion slowly disappeared. Qin Weibai walked in steadily. Her expression didn't change at all. Her calm aura was drowned in the darkness the moment she entered the door. She frowned slightly. Brighten up, she said slowly. Military counselor, who showed his true face, was here. Naturally, the lights in the main hall couldn't be turned on. Saint gently flicked his fingers, and a clear sword light lit up in the darkness. The faint light illuminated a small area. Qin Weibai sat on the sofa in the middle of the light. After a moment of silence, she asked, what's the matter? What's your plan for the future of Tianlan? Military counselor asked casually after a moment of silence. Qin Weibai glanced at military counselor coldly and said calmly, don't test me. Tianlan doesn't need any arrangement for the future. We should all remember our positions. I'm his woman. You're his subordinates. We're not qualified to arrange anything for him. We're by his side. In the future, we'll follow him. That's all. Don't you understand this? Military counselor took a deep breath and smiled. I understand. But there are still some things that need to be said. The Wang family of Beihai today. Do you have any idea about Wang Tianzong's injury? Military counselor asked. Qin Weibai really didn't understand martial arts. But to some extent, she could be said to be the person who knew the sword move in Eastern Europe the best. Knowing that sword move, she should be able to roughly judge Wang Tianzong's injury. Qin Weibai thought about it seriously and said hesitantly, if there's no accident, his injury can't recover in 3 to 5 years. This is the best situation. The worst situation was needless to say. Either Wang Tianzong died directly or his injury would be difficult to heal for the rest of his life. 3 to 5 years, military counselor murmured to himself. Have you heard any rumors? Saint suddenly asked. With the current position of the Wang family of Beihai and some of the things they did in Eastern Europe, there were indeed some rumors in the high level of Jianghu state, but it was hard to know whether they were true or not. From this aspect, it seemed that Jianghu state could not make up its mind. Rumors? Military counselor laughed. Today, I've received calls from 9 council members, and they're all talking about the same thing. Is this considered a rumor? Qin Weibai narrowed her eyes. Saint's face changed slightly. There were only 9 council members in the Jianghu state parliament. They could be said to be the real giants with the most power and strength in Jianghu state, representing the will of the entire Jianghu state. Within one day, all 9 giants called military counselor? What did this mean? Including those in the southeast? Saint frowned and asked calmly. Of course. Military counselor nodded. He paused and continued, including summer solstice. Qin Weibai rubbed her white forehead and said softly, what's the position of those in the southeast? Of course it's the position of the southeast. Military counselor said blandly, although there are problems inside the Wang family of Beihai, in this respect, their cohesion is still extraordinary. Their cohesiveness is extraordinary, and they all hope to get my support. Of course, their words won't be so obvious, but their intentions are there. Qin Weibai and Saint looked at each other and did not speak. Military counselor's public identity and relationship with the Wang family of Beihai could be said to be very good. Although they were not strategic partners, several times of cooperation between them had always been quite pleasant. If military counselor was not military counselor and really chose to support the Wang family of Beihai, it was enough to make the entire Jianghu state restless and even afraid to take action. Those council members in the southeast hoped military counselor to support the Wang family of Beihai, and the council members of several other groups also called military counselor on the same day, naturally to test military counselor's attitude. The game between Jianghu state and the Wang family of Beihai might be extremely tragic, or it might be light. But in any case, before the official start, both Jianghu state and the Wang family of Beihai hoped to win the support of a few super heavyweight top figures with extraordinary status. Military counselor was naturally one of them, and it was not an exaggeration to say that he was the most important one. There was no doubt that military counselor saw an opportunity. Support Jianghu state, support Beihai, or be neutral. No matter what kind of attitude, with careful planning, it was promising. Although Samsara Palace had been destroyed, it was obvious that military counselor still wanted to seize this opportunity to set off a general trend similar to the chaos in Eastern Europe or the final battle of Heaven capital. Although Samsara Palace had been destroyed, with their current strength, it was not impossible. Now they needed to discuss how to operate and what they could get in the end. Qin Weibai pondered and did not speak for a long time. What ideas do you have? Saint suddenly asked. If military counselor did not have enough ability, it would be too unworthy of his code name. Moreover, after the chaos in Eastern Europe, Saint became the sword master of Mount Shu and appeared in everyone's sight. Qin Weibai came to Li Tianlan's side. On the contrary, military counselor controlled most of their remaining or deliberately protected forces. He was a steady man. If he did not have a general idea, it was impossible for him to come to them and tell them these things. We can push it behind the scenes. Military counselor said slowly, I told Tianlan more than 3 years ago that the whole world is looking for the headquarters of Samsara Palace, but no one knows that the real headquarters of Samsara Palace is in Jianghu state. He said slowly. Obviously, he was also thinking carefully. At present, the power in my hands is enough. Do you want to flip the cards? Qin Weibai suddenly asked. Samsara Palace still had countless trump cards in Jianghu state, big and small, densely packed. Only military counselor, who was absolutely trusted by the master of Samsara Palace, could hold all these trump cards in his hands and operate them in an orderly manner. Once these cards were flipped, it was enough to set off an unimaginable storm inside Jianghu state. Yes. Military counselor's voice was very calm. It's too early. Qin Weibai raised her eyebrows. Tell me your reason. I'm tired. Military counselor smiled. If these cards are flipped, it will be enough for the Li family to have the influence of its peak in an instant. I don't think it's too early now. Qin Weibai was silent. He was tired. This was the reason given by military counselor. She did not know whether such a reason was true or not, but it did not matter. The most important thing was that even if it was true, the reason why he was tired was that there was one less person. Just like Flaming Fire wanted to leave. Military counselor and Flaming Fire. They were both tired. In other words, no matter how persistent they were, no matter how real they were. In their hearts, after all, it was still different. It was really different. That was why they felt tired. Chapter 672. Qin Weibai sat on the sofa. Saint's sword radiance emitted a faint light, illuminating a small piece of darkness. She bathed in the light and was lost in thought for a long time. It seemed that she had not been as powerless as she was now for many years. Since the establishment of Samsara Palace, it had been an organization with a strong purpose. It could even be said to be an organization with only one purpose. From the beginning to the end. What everyone in Samsara Palace tried to do was to create a sky without shadows. All the plans, all the calculations, and a large number of trump cards came to an end in Mormon's eternal sword. Samsara Palace collapsed. After that, the plan was blank. But even so, Samsara Palace still had a lot of power that had not been exposed and was controlled by military counselor. It didn't need a plan. Everyone knew that once military counselor used these trump cards, the Li family supported by them could definitely become the top force in Jianghu state in an instant and even recover to its peak glory. But there was a premise for all this. Such power was the power in military counselor's hands and the power of Samsara Palace. But this was not the power of the Li family. Li Tianlan firmly believed that the Li family was his. The remaining small group of Samsara Palace also firmly believed in this. But those trump cards had been buried for too long, so there were countless variables hidden inside. How to smoothly transfer this power to Li Tianlan's hands and let them really accept Li Tianlan and the Li family's leadership was the question that military counselor should think about most now. And how far Li Tianlan could go also depended on his future achievements and development. So Qin Weibai felt that it was still too early. Li Tianlan had not yet broken through to the invincible realm. He had the combat capability of the invincible realm, but his real combat capability had surpassed the ordinary invincible realm experts. With the dragon vein, after the chaos in Eastern Europe, the dragon vein on his back had completely recovered. Jianghu state was thriving, and Li Tianlan was making progress almost all the time. The sword formation of the 13-story buildings had almost integrated with him. Under such circumstances, no one knew how terrible Li Tianlan would be in the future. Who dared to guess what Li Tianlan would do in 3 years? What would happen in 5 years? This was what Qin Weibai had been looking forward to the most. This shadowless sky completely belonged to Li Tianlan. No force could put pressure on him or suppress him. The foundation of the emperor in Tiannan had begun to take shape. The right time, place, and people were all in place. This is destined to be the fastest development of Emperor Dong's palace. It was the craziest few years of the world. 3 to 5 years later, both Li Tianlan and Emperor Dong's palace would become extremely powerful. In Qin Weibai's expectation, that would also be the most appropriate time. Both Li Tianlan and Emperor Dong's palace had made convincing achievements. Military counselor revealed all the trump cards in his hands and sent the Li family back to its former peak. In the face of the incomparably powerful Li Tianlan, those hidden trump cards naturally knew how to choose. But now, the military counselor felt that it was time. Obviously, he wanted to take advantage of Li Tianlan's attack on the entire Beihai to use his power to set off a storm that was extremely favorable to the Li family in the game between Jianghu state and Beihai. Such a plan might not be considered hasty. But the timing was not perfect. It was impossible for the military counselor not to know this. But his reason was simple and powerful. He was tired. This was also the reason that made Qin Weibai feel the most powerless. To some extent, military counselor and flaming fire were the same. They might not be tired, but after the sword stroke in Eastern Europe, they had lost their direction. Qin Weibai could not stop flaming fire. She could not stop military counselor either. Just as she said to flaming fire. No one was qualified to question her. But she was also not qualified to restrain them. She fully understood this feeling. It was probably the feeling of being disheartened. Qin Weibai also felt a little disheartened. She felt that everything was the same. This feeling was extremely real and rational. Nothing could deny it. But both flaming fire and military counselor felt that it was different. This was their own insistence. Do you not recognize me or Tianlan? Qin Weibai asked. There was no need to ask this question. The tragic ending of Samsara Palace today was all because of Li Tianlan. But this was something that was destined when Samsara Palace was established. This kind of unequal thing, at least in their hearts, was nothing. Everyone felt that Li Tianlan's growth and future were worthy of Samsara Palace's efforts. Otherwise, Saint would not have joined Samsara Palace and become a deputy palace master. You think too much. Military counselor's voice was very sincere. His attitude was not as intense as flaming fires, but it was also extremely firm. These years, I'm really a little tired. In fact, a long time ago, I thought about the days after retirement. That's the day I've always longed for. These things at present can be said to be my last task. It's unnecessary. Everything in my hands will be handed over to Tianlan. I will handle this matter well. How are you going to make use of this opportunity? Saint asked. The upcoming game between Jianghu State and Beihai was destined to involve the overall situation. Being in the game, this was an opportunity for everyone. Would the 800,000 square kilometers of territory in the northeast become the real foundation for the Wang family of Beihai to flourish, or would it become the springboard for Jianghu State to completely take over Beihai province? This was bound to be a question that everyone would pay close attention to. At this moment, a person suddenly came to Saint's mind. Dongqing Wudi's wife, Bai Qingxian. She was transferred from Qinzhou to Liaodong more than 3 years ago to serve as the speaker of Liaodong, and that was shortly after Qin Weibai contacted the Dongqing clan. So, was this move the Samsara Palace's foresight or the Dongqing clan's foresight? Longjiang, Liaodong, Guangdong. When the Wang family of Beihai occupied the general trend of Longjiang, once the chaos broke out, Liaodong would be the first to bear the brunt. How would the military counselor make use of this opportunity? I think it won't be long before the higher-ups of Jianghu State send out a clear signal. Beihai and Jianghu State, such a game can't have a winner or loser in a short time. Once the game starts, there are opportunities everywhere. We should find the most suitable entry point for us now. Military counselor said slowly. Qin Weibai's mind was in a mess. She didn't think much about it and said subconsciously, the game hasn't started yet. How would you know what the entry point is? Military counselor and Saint looked at her at the same time. We don't know. Military counselor answered her question, but this game is like a point that leads to different endings. This is something that is destined to happen. As for the process, it can be created. We don't need to know the whole process. What we need to discuss is what kind of entry point we need to create in this process. What she could create was naturally the most certain. Qin Weibai was silent for a long time. Saint and military counselor stopped talking. After a long time, Qin Weibai sighed tiredly and said softly, Tianlan is coming back. We'll discuss this when he comes back. Military counselor frowned and was about to speak. Qin Weibai's cell phone rang. She took out her cell phone and answered it. After listening for a while, she put down the phone with a strange look. What's wrong? Saint asked aloud. There's news from the hospital. Qin Weibai frowned slightly. Li Guangtu woke up. Chapter 673. When he struggled to sit up from the hospital bed, Li Guangtu's consciousness was in a blank state for a long time. The hospital at night was quiet. His bed was near the window. In the sky by the window, the silver moon hung high, and the cold and bright light enveloped him. Everything in his sight seemed to be in a trance. He opened his eyes and stared blankly out of the window, not moving for a long time. It seemed that a nurse who was making ward rounds late at night came in, and then rushed out in surprise. Li Guangtu had been sitting there, not speaking, not moving, and even without any thoughts. His figure gradually merged with the moonlight and became extremely indifferent. The doctor rushed to the ward at the first time and carefully seemed to want to check his physical condition. A hazy and almost weak sword light appeared around the figure shrouded in moonlight. The sword light, which had no lethality at all, seriously injured 2 doctors on the spot. The ward was completely quiet. Under the moonlight, blood flowed down Li Guangtu's body. The sword intent that had just been forcibly released directly affected the injury in his body. The severe pain and tearing feeling spread from every part of his body. Li Guangtu, who was a little sluggish, finally frowned and looked down at his bleeding body. Thinking and consciousness began to return with the pain. Li Kuangtu took a deep breath and turned his eyes. The sound of the instruments in the ward was still ringing. The ward he was in was not a single room. Less than 5 meters away from him, there was an extremely delicate and beautiful figure lying on the ground, unconscious. Her long black hair was scattered on the white bed sheets. She lay there motionlessly, so quiet that she was like a phantom. The instrument beside her showed her heart rate and blood pressure. Li Kuangtu glanced at it and laughed at himself. His smile seemed to be distorted because of the pain, and he looked a little crazy. Li Shi. This was the woman he had once loved deeply, but she had ruined everything for him. Li Kuangtu never dreamed that the first person he saw after he woke up from serious injuries would be Li Shi. Li Kuangtu's eyes gradually became indifferent. He stared at Li Shi indifferently, and his eyes were full of disgust. Even if she stood by his side in Eastern Europe. Even if she resisted the pressure of Kunlun City in Eastern Europe to draw a sword for him. But she betrayed him. The wife of the governor of Kunlun City, Li Kuangtu smiled again. How beautiful a woman was. However, the disgust in his eyes became clearer and clearer. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. He felt a little sick. There was the sound of the door being pushed open. With light footsteps, Qin Weibai walked into the ward with Saint. Li Kuangtu shifted his gaze. The disgust in his eyes quickly faded. But Qin Weibai was still keenly aware of his emotions. The smile on her face instantly froze, and her heart sank at the same time. She stood there, looking extremely awkward. Where am I? Li Kuangtu asked directly. Because fresh blood flowed down his body. At this moment, he was completely awake. Even though he was extremely weak, his every move still carried an extremely obvious offensive nature. Yuzhou. Qin Weibai said nothing. It was the saint who answered him. Li Kuangtu raised his eyebrows for a moment and sneered. The capital of Jianghu state. Why? I'm a traitor now in Yuzhou. Why didn't anyone catch me and bring me back for trial? I'm awake now. Why are you here instead of the elites of Kunlun City? Saint was silent. Qin Weibai was silent. Li Kuangtu's smile became more and more obvious and mocking. Oh, I forgot that the hostess of Kunlun City is here now. Why? Is Jianghu state going to let her take me back? Now I wake up earlier than her. Is Jianghu state very disappointed? Do you hate her? Qin Weibai suddenly asked. Now Li Kuangtu was obviously a little emotional, but everything he showed in an emotional state was closer to his true mind. Li Kuangtu froze for a moment. He looked at Qin Weibai in surprise. He didn't know what his awakening meant for the time being. But in the situation in Eastern Europe, he could still live, which was enough to show that there was a problem in the Wang family of Beihai, even a big problem. What problem was more important than Wang Tianzong's own state? After a little speculation, Li Kuangtu could roughly know Wang Tianzong's current state. The Wang family of Beihai was unstable internally. It was not difficult to guess what attitude Jianghu state would have. There were more and more rumors in Jianghu state now. But really, how could it be a rumor? Beihai was too strong. Jianghu state would definitely take action when it found the right time. It was impossible for Li Kuangtu not to think of this. He woke up at this time, and there were too many things to say to Qin Weibai. If he was willing to cooperate, the purgatory of Heaven capital could play an unexpected role. But now, standing in front of him, Qin Weibai's first sentence was to ask him if he hated Li Shi. Was this an important question? This chapter is not over. Please turn the page. Li Kuangtu was at a loss for a moment, and then shook his head. I hated her, but I don't hate her now. He was telling the truth. He had loved and hated this woman. But now this kind of extreme emotion would no longer exist. He just felt that Li Shi was disgusting, really disgusting. Is it because of that sword stroke? Qin Weibai asked seriously, but if you want to hate her, it shouldn't have started at that time, right? Li Guangtu was inexplicable. He couldn't figure out why Qin Weibai was entangled in this topic. But he had just woken up and had not recovered from his serious injury, so he was a little relaxed. Why do you say that? I know the battle that year, Qin Weibai said. I even know the list of masters who participated in the battle that year. In the face of that kind of siege, no matter how you look at it, you will lose without a doubt. In the end, you will not have the possibility of winning. But if you are in a stalemate in the end, you may not die, but Li Shi's sword ended everything for you. Qin Weibai looked into his eyes. She was very serious, but with a trace of tension. I have simulated that battle many times. Different environments, different moves, and different situations tell me that at the moment when Li Shi pierced your heart with the long sword, if you wanted to take action, it was absolutely possible to kill Li Shi at that moment. But you didn't do that. Why? Li Guangtu's brows furrowed more tightly. I can't do it. He was expressionless and said in a cold voice. It's impossible that you can't do it. Qin Weibai looked at Li Guangtu very seriously. You can't bear to, right? Even at that time, you can't bear to kill her. Li Guangtu looked at Qin Weibai coldly and did not speak. Do you regret it? Qin Weibai continued to ask, or, have you ever regretted it? In the almost suffocating silence, Li Guangtu suddenly smiled. What do you think? Saint took a step forward and seemed to want to pull Qin Weibai away. Qin Weibai suddenly waved her hand to let Saint step back. She looked at Li Guangtu closely and said word by word, I don't know. She really didn't know. But this was her obsession. I don't regret it. Li Guangtu said faintly, this is the thing I regret the most in my life. He looked at Li Shi. Such a disgusting woman, I couldn't bear to kill her at that time. Oh, I should have smashed her into pieces at that time. He looked at the unconscious Li Shi, and his eyes became colder. Qin Weibai seemed to have lost all her strength in an instant, and her face suddenly became as pale as paper. End of this chapter, bookmark for easy reading. Chapter 674. Disgust was a very common emotion. But when a person hated something he had liked or even loved deeply, to some extent, it was equivalent to denying everything he had liked before. Those pursuits, those passions, those affections, everything was completely denied, and it was cold and cruel. This was different from hatred. Qin Weibai actually hoped that Li Guangtu had some hatred for Li Shi, because it meant that he still hadn't let go of the past that he had protected and devoted himself to. The so-called hatred was nothing more than being unable to accept it. But in Li Guangtu's eyes and tone, she really didn't see any hatred. There was only indifference and disgust. Have you ever thought that maybe she had no choice but to do what she did back then? Maybe she was coerced by someone? Qin Weibai looked at Li Guangtu and was silent for a long time before she asked tentatively. At this moment, she was really not strong at all. She even looked a little delicate and pitiful. For example, her father at that time, Qin Weibai said softly, and her and your child. Li Guangtu looked at her silently. There was no emotion in his eyes. In the extremely perturbed waiting, he felt the blood flowing through his body and finally gave his answer. Do I need to know? The simplest rhetorical question. But Qin Weibai froze there for a long time. At that time, I was already dead. Li Guangtu smiled and talked about the sword in that year, and his tone didn't even have the disgust he had just shown. She may have been involuntarily, but at that time, her sword pierced my chest. I was already dead. Does a dead person need to know these things? Even if she has many explanations, which are inspiring and sad, what's the use? I'm already dead. After she killed me, would she say to my corpse that she was involuntarily and then hope that the dead person would forgive her? Some things couldn't be explained. Qin Weibai finally understood why Li Shi was always silent when Li Shi and Li Guangtu met more than once many years later. Even in Eastern Europe, when she stood beside Li Guangtu and faced Wang Tianzong. She had no choice. She was coerced. She couldn't help it. But everything was her own position. In fact, she killed Li Kuangtu. Li Kuangtu could come back to life. This was his ability, and it had nothing to do with Li Shi. No one understood what she had endured in her heart. No one could understand what was going through Li Kuangtu's mind when her sword pierced through his heart. So many years. So many grievances, Qin Weibai muttered to herself. I didn't give it to you. Li Kuangtu said indifferently, I don't owe her anything. Even if I did, I've paid it off back then. You're right, I could have killed her back then. But I can't bear to. Regret is a matter for the future. She betrayed me back then, but I spared her life. Haven't I paid her back? It's her own choice to suffer all these years of grievance. If she really doesn't want to suffer, Li Kuangtu smiled and glanced at Li Shi, who was still unconscious. Why doesn't she die? But she helped you in Eastern Europe. Qin Weibai said. The moonlight shone on her face. Her face was so pale that it was almost transparent. I am very grateful to myself. Li Kuangtu nodded, she can help me because I didn't kill her back then. She owes me the life I gave her. Do you expect me to forgive her just because of that? Qin Weibai's body shook slightly. Her brain was in a mess, and everything was blank. Her hands were clenched into fists, and her nails had pierced into her palms. Blood dripped down her palms and dripped on the floor. Li Kuangtu suddenly raised his eyebrows. Saint, who was standing closely behind Qin Weibai, suddenly raised his head. The majestic sword intent instantly filled every corner of the ward. The ward was quiet, not a sound could be heard. Saint was silent for a long time before he calmly said, Boss, this question is meaningless. You seem to care about this question? Li Kuangtu looked at Qin Weibai with some playfulness and said thoughtfully, Why? Qin Weibai looked at Li Kuangtu and did not speak. What do you want from me? Li Kuangtu did not seem to be obsessed with the answer. His voice returned to indifference, and there was even a trace of killing intent in his eyes. Have you ever thought? Qin Weibai's voice trembled a little, but she still continued the original topic. She actually had a lot of things to say here. The identity of Li Kuangtu meant too many things. In the next general trend, if used well, he was definitely the most important figure. The cooperation between the Samsara Palace and the Purgatory of Heaven capital, the Li family and the Samsara Palace, the Emperor East Palace and the Purgatory of Heaven capital, Tiannan, and even the Wang family of Beihai. As long as the two sides could cooperate, there were too many things that could be done. However, the question about Li Shi obviously interfered with Qin Weibai's thinking. Her heart was in a mess. In such a state, it was obviously not suitable to talk about any cooperation with Li Kuangtu. She pointed at Li Shi with her blood-stained fingers. She has had a bad life these years. Who will understand her situation and everything she has endured? The blood dripped on the ground. Li Kuangtu was silent for a moment and said faintly, No one understands. Are you saying that she deserves all of this? Qin Weibai looked at Li Kuangtu and asked. Li Kuangtu was expressionless and did not speak for a long time. Qin Weibai stood up and looked at Li Shi. Her eyes flashed with countless complex emotions. Li Shi lay quietly. For so many years, it seemed that it was the first time that she had slept so peacefully. I can understand her. Qin Weibai was silent for a long time before she said softly. Li Kuangtu was not wrong. Li Shi was also not wrong. In the most unfeeling world, there were always some people who lived the most affectionate. She could understand everything about her. If you want, I can change a ward for her. Qin Weibai turned around and looked at Li Kuangtu. Li Kuangtu nodded expressionlessly without any hesitation. Qin Weibai stood in front of Li Shi for a long time before she turned and left. Saint looked back at Li Kuangtu, did not speak, and closed the door of the ward. The moonlight shone down softly. The whole room was cold. Li Kuangtu was silent for a long time alone, and suddenly said, When do you want to see it? Why, when your woman and your subordinates are here, do you have any concerns that you can't say? Li Shi was still asleep. The moonlight gently fluctuated in the dark corner that could not be found. A figure came out of the darkness and became clearer and clearer. I just don't think our next negotiation should be heard by anyone. Li Tianlan stood in front of Li Guangtu and said calmly, "You're tuning into the Carefree Valley YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories."